The Blast from Our Past Network.
Hey everyone, co-host Corey here. I just wanted to take a quick second and say thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. Without you, Podcasting After Dark would not be possible. If you would like to help the show grow, please consider signing up at patreon.com/podcastingafterdark. You can also support the show by purchasing one of our awesome t-shirt designs on our merch store at podcastingafterdark.com, or by picking up a copy of 7 Winters Alone by David Irons on paperback, hardback, or Kindle. Just search for 7 Winters Alone on Amazon or click on the link in the show notes. A free way to help out is to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Those reviews are huge for us and really helps get the show in front of new listeners. Again, thank you all so much for the love and support you've given us over these past few years. It really means the world to us.
Lock your doors, close your windows, turn out your lights, for chills and thrills await you. It's time for Podcasting After Dark with your hosts, Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer. Stay with a friend, say your prayers as grisly ghouls close in to seal your doom.
Tonight's episode, Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, starring Alan Ormsby, Paul Cronin, and Jane Daly.
When you think of childhood trauma, well, for me, I'll have to put this movie at the top, or close to it. Welcome, everybody, to another Podcasting After Dark PG episode. Not Psycho Gorman, but PG in rating. I am one half of the pad team. Sweet Sexy Z, Zach the Snack, whatever rhymes at the time. And joining me as always is my beautiful, and I haven't said this in a while, my beautiful bodacious co-host, Corey Sleazy C. What's happening, brother?
Oh man, I am excited to finally getting the chance to talk about Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. You've been talking about this movie for so long, and it's finally here, guys and gals. It's finally here, and I am chomping at the bit to talk about it.
Well, about a year ago, was it about a year ago? We did a PG episode, I believe, or you did.
I think the car was PG, yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to follow up mine. Something happened. It didn't happen the way I think I expected it. And then word on the DVD, Blu-ray, Dawn of the Disc Instagram site, shout out to them, that Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things was coming out. I'm like, oh, that's the one I want to do. So I waited on that one and waited, and it finally came out in, I think, December.
And it's a 50th anniversary edition Blu-ray.
Wow. Yeah, and there's a 4K, but let's be honest, guys. Like, do you really need a 4K of this movie? No offense. You know, it's like I got the 4K of Night of the Living Dead. Oh, it's so great. It's got all, you never seen the picture so good. Yeah, but that was kind of the point. Like, it's not supposed to be like you could just walk into the movie. It's supposed to be a little grainy and all that stuff.
And I would have said the same thing up until last Saturday when I watched Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark with my nephew.
Okay.
My 8-year-old nephew, he very much enjoyed it, although he didn't quite understand the stakes because he didn't quite, know Nazis and stuff like that. So I had to kind of give him a very brief, like, they were very bad, yada, yada,
Let me tell you something, kid.
But here's the thing. I thought it was going to be on Disney Plus. It's not. It's on Paramount Plus, which I actually don't have, which makes sense, but doesn't make sense because Disney should own it. So I popped in my DVD and I was like, sure, I have the DVD box set of all 3 of them. No big deal. It's going to look great. Wrong. Looked like fucking shit. Do you remember when DVD was like cutting edge technology?
I was just talking to Aaron Gilmer about this from Manic Movie Monday podcast, that the quality of DVDs, like when it first came out, DVDs, you've never seen a picture quite like it. And now we're like, DVDs, you never want to see a picture quite like that.
Ever again. So it looked like...
Ever again.
So now I'm like, well, fuck it. I guess I'll go and buy Raiders on 4K or something like that. And to the 4K discussion, I don't tend to double dip Blu-ray to 4K, but if I don't have the Blu-ray already, I'll get the 4K of it. Like I just picked up Event Horizon 4K and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4K because I didn't have either of them on Blu-ray. But I don't think I'll upgrade something that I already have on Blu-ray to 4K.
I agree, but I think I was talking to Lee Germani about this. Shout out to Lee. He was like, I don't have any 4Ks because I don't have a 4K player at the moment. But Blu-ray's fine, dude. In fact, this particular movie, Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, looks pretty damn good on Blu-ray, and the Blu-ray is stacked with a bunch of extras, including like a 90-minute documentary, et cetera, et cetera. VCI put it out. VCI is a very small boutique company. I'm surprised, to be honest, that they're still around. I think at this point they're kind of just repurposing their catalog, which is totally fine. I think they were the ones also who put out the Scarecrow movie as well that we did.
Oh yeah, Dark Knight of the Scarecrow. Okay.
Yeah, so support those small businesses and buy this because it's totally worth it. Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. I'll get into my laundry list of my history with it, but Corey, what's your history with Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things?
Hearing about it from you. That's pretty much it.
Wow.
I've heard about it. I'd heard of it before you. I'd seen the VHS in the store and everything like that, but never dove into it. So everything I know from you. And you never told me sort of the story about it or whatever. I just knew you liked it. So I didn't really want to watch it or know much about it until we covered it because I knew you were going to bring it to the table one of these days. So, and I think I even knew at one point it was in my stack. So if I know it's in my stack and I haven't seen it, I'm not going to even watch the trailer. I'm going to go in cold with my first viewing.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, it's not a surprise that you haven't seen it because I feel like it's very much a cult film, in the truest cult sense, where it doesn't have a wide range of an audience. Growing up in Detroit as a young kid, from 0 to 8, we had Thriller TV on TV 20. And in fact, that was the inspiration for the intro to our show, because Saturdays they had Creature Feature Saturdays, and then they would do a double feature, I think, sometimes as well. Maybe it was all the time. I don't recall. But the intro to the show was the part of Whole Lotta Love where just Robert Plant's going and they looped it, and they used that sound with the zombie scene at the end of this movie where they're rising from the graves and in slow motion, and it was so freaky, so intense for a young child. It gave me night terrors during the day, and it was so scary. When I finally did see this movie when I was probably 7 or 8 years old, I don't remember the first 3 quarters of the movie. I just remember the last quarter, and it terrified me and stayed with me to this day. Watching it again, I watched this movie 3 times, actually. 2 for funsies, as to quote Corey. I watched it twice just for fun because I loved it so much. It just took me back to being a kid again, watching a really wacky film that in no way should be a PG movie. In no way whatsoever. In tone, in subject matter, even though the special effects are low budge, it's still horrific at times and downright creepy at the end. So this is not a PG movie, guys. This is not a movie for kids at all.
No, children shouldn't watch. Children shouldn't play with dead things.
No. And then I didn't realize until just now, the past week, breaking this movie down, how this is truly an indie film. It's a low budget indie film made by a bunch of friends who went on to continue to work together for a few more pictures, and it's a labor of love. And also, this film influenced so many other movies moving forward. Talking about Return of the Living Dead. Talking about Lucio Fulci's Zombie. Talking about maybe Dawn of the Dead, perhaps, or Day of the Dead. But, so many zombie movies moving forward, you could clearly tell were influenced by this. And I think I think that's why this film deserves a revisit, deserves a appreciation. Whether it's a flawless film or not, whether it's a good film or not, is beside the point. It's one of those movies that people go back, well, if it hadn't been for this movie, we wouldn't have had that movie. And I think those are the movies that we need to cherish and champion.
I completely agree with you. And I see the Return of the Living Dead having influence or being influenced by this film, especially, you know, kind of like the tonalness of it. Like, I don't think that's a word, tonalness, but the tone of the movie. It walks the line between comedy and horror. Like, the stakes are real, but sometimes there's humor in some, maybe a death, or there's maybe humor with the characters or something. There's always this like baseline humor going on, even when the zombies and you know, are kind of scary and they're doing their thing and killing people. But yeah, I can see that. I can totally see how Return of the Living Dead would be influenced by this. And yeah, other things too, especially zombie and whatnot.
I'd say zombie only from the perspective of the boat,
yeah.
and then the island.
Yep. I saw that as well because I'm a big zombie fan. Love Fulci, and yeah, I thought the exact same thing. But again, keep in mind, guys and gals, this is 1972. This movie came out in 1972. Yeah. So it's old. It's 50th anniversary right now. We're 51 years essentially out.
Well, Night is 68, right? Night of the Living Dead is 68. Yep. I think this is the next zombie movie that came out in the zombie chronological order.
And it's interesting because the zombies in this, they don't technically run. They're not as running like as fast as like Dawn of the Dead remake, but they're also faster than Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead. So it's like, it's almost as if like, you know, George Romero hadn't really solidified the tone yet of zombies. No. And these guys and gals, undead guys and gals, they move pretty briskly. And, you know, you don't really know if they're eating people or if they're just killing them for the sake of killing them. But I like that. I like that they're going to kill you no matter what. You know, maybe they're fucking angry. You don't know. The cool thing is there's no answers in here, and that's what's fun about it.
I have some theories though, and we'll get into that as well. But before anyone jumps the gun and goes, "Oh, but what about this movie?" Living Dead at Manchester Morgue, aka Let Sleeping Corpses Lie, came out in 1974.
Yeah,
and I believe that was the next horror zombie film to come out before Dawn of the Dead, which I think was 79 or something, and then 78 maybe, and then Zombie was soon after that. So we're looking at like a really early film.
Side note real quick, I personally adore Living Dead at Manchester Morgue.
I know you do. That's why I brought it up.
That's a movie that I actually did buy on 4K this past Christmas, because Myra and I watched it on Shudder, and I was like, oh man, it's as good as I remember. I was like, I need to own it. And we have to cover it. Well, we will one day cover it on Podcasting After Dark.
Yeah, if y'all want to see a very decent underground indie horror film from, you know, the left side of the pond or right side or wherever the fuck, definitely check out that one.
Definitely.
We'll get to it. But this film, behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, is a who's who of talent, starting with the director and one of the writers, Bob Clark. Rest in peace, Bob Clark.
Who we covered with our Black Christmas episode.
Yeah, if you don't know who Bob Clark is, then stop listening to our show. Just kidding. Write us a 5-star review, then stop listening to our show. He, you know, besides Black Christmas and A Christmas Story and Porky's and Baby Geniuses, which actually is not that bad, he is a horror director. Besides Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things and Black Christmas, obviously, Death Dream is a fantastic horror film as well. If you've never seen that, go see it. And I adore that film, and I would actually like to bring that to the table down the road. But he directed Rhinestone. He directed Turk 182, From the Hip, Loose Cannons, a bunch of 80s movies that we love. not love, but we at least watch them on a regular basis thanks to HBO and Cinemax back in the day.
Yeah, and word on the street is he was possibly developing a sequel / maybe remake, reboot of Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things before he unfortunately was killed by a drunk driver on the PCH back in 2007.
Yeah, don't drink and drive.
No.
I'll just leave it at that.
And that was like midday too. Like
that's really fucked up.
Jesus.
It's really messed up. Flip side, Alan Ormsby not only stars in this film as Alan, but he's the writer. He also did the special effects or the makeup effects in this film. And his screenplay credits include Cat People, Porky's 2, My Bodyguard, which is a favorite of mine and Dustin's on $2 late fee. Touch and Go. Popcorn starring Jill Sholin. And actually, Popcorn is a very underrated horror film.
I know it has its fans. I've seen a lot of them online. I haven't seen that one. I think I almost picked up the Blu-ray on sale, but I'd already spent like $100 on like Blu-rays. I was like, I can't, you know.
You should go. You should watch it. At least if it's on Shudder, you should watch it there.
Okay.
But so he wrote a lot of screenplays, but one movie in particular that we may get to down the road scared the shit out of me from 1974. Actually, next to that film with Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie, Don't Look Now, that shocking finale. This movie might have one of the shockingest scenes for me, like ever. Deranged, Confessions of a Necrophile from 1974. He wrote that and co-directed it along with Jeff Gillen, but it is based on Ed Gein.
And you talked about it on the Carpenter Factor when we discussed Christine, because Robert's Blossom is in it, and you mentioned Deranged, how much you loved that. Okay, so now we're getting, it's coming around sort of like full circle and everything. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. The film it's slow paced. It's not perfect, but oh my God, is it creepy as hell. And there's one scene in particular that to this day I still like shudder when I'm watching it. I get shocked.
And he also did the special effects on a movie that you and I watched together, Shockwaves.
I
enjoyed that movie, dude.
Another PG movie that I think we should down the road bring to Pad because I love that movie.
And as a kid, I was scared of that movie poster, but yet I would always look at it like the VHS cover. I'd like look at it and and I'd sort of put it back and then kind of like sneak back at it. You know, it's an awesome movie poster with those soggy zombies sort of coming out of the water and picking up the boat and everything.
Yeah, the Nazi zombies.
Yep.
Gosh. Yeah, if you guys haven't seen that, go watch that one. And we'll get to that down the road. I love that movie.
Yeah, directed by the guy who directed Return of the Living Dead Part 2.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Oh, my gosh. All these connections.
Yeah, we're right. We're doing quite a spider web right now, aren't we?
We sure are. But when we get to the cast, we'll probably stop at that point.
It'll peter out a bit.
Yeah, because we're not a fan of no headshots on IMDb, and this one is filled with it. Yeah, I was doing the intro for this, and I'm like, well, really, in my opinion, Alan, Paul, and Terry are kind of like the main characters in this.
Yeah.
Out of the three. Unfortunately, Paul doesn't have a IMDb picture, but Alan Ormsby does. His picture he's still alive, by the way, and he uses the picture from Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, so it tells you how much he loves this movie. Val Mamches plays Val. I'm kind of maybe going to insert a new rule here is if they don't have a headshot and they're not super memorable, I'm not going to talk about their IMDb.
I mean, her character is memorable, but yeah, she's done 2 movies. Like it's like this and Wanda, and that's it. Yeah. So, but yeah, 1970s Wanda. So
there you go.
And I don't know why. Yeah, I thought Terry and Paul should have had the second and third billing after Alan.
Yeah, I don't understand why they don't, but it doesn't make sense to me. But IMDb does that. They're famous for that. Like, what? Oh, Lethal Weapon starring Mel Gibson and Tom Atkins. Oh, and Danny Glover.
Exactly.
I'm kidding. They don't do that, but I'm exaggerating. Jeff Gillen plays Jeff.
And you would know him as Santa Claus from A Christmas Story, the one that goes ho 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 and kind of pushes him down. But he played. Yep. So
Wow, that's cool. Okay. That's something that's worth noting.
And I really like his character in this movie with, I peed myself. I peed my pants. I love that. What does he say? Does he even have a dry pamper?
Yeah, I think you're going to have to be saying that through this whole episode. I peed my pants.
I peed my
pants.
I love that scene. I thought he was great. I thought Jeff was hilarious in this.
Jeff, give me an ABC. I peed my pants. I peed my pants. I peed my pants. Oh, that's pretty good. And Anya Ormsby, who is actually the former wife of Alan Ormsby, plays Anya. And it makes sense why she's making goo-goo eyes the whole time at Alan.
Yes, it does.
As his wife.
She had a role in Alien Nation, the TV show, for an episode.
Oh, cool. We love that show. Listen to TV Obscura where we talk about Alien Nation. Paul Cronin plays Paul.
Paul Cronin plays Paul with the frizziest fro I've ever seen. And guys and gals, this movie was shot in like Florida. So like everybody, I'm sure it was shot during the summer in between. I think everyone met at Florida State University. Or is it University of Florida? It's University of Florida. That's where Alan Ormsby and Bob Clark met and everything like that. But you can tell by how frizzy everybody's hair is, guy and girl, that it's the dead fucking humid summer of fucking Florida, man. It had to have been a nightmare.
And his necklace is not doing him any favors either.
No.
His choker necklace of like various rainbow beads. It's cute, but not sexy. Jane Daly plays Terry. Yeah, the only one in the whole movie that doesn't have the same name that her first name is. I do not want to be called Jane.
But she's also the one that's probably been working the most since, like up till today.
Oh, like literally today. No, I'm kidding. Right on. Yeah, no, she's great. And the 70s when we didn't wear bras.
Yes, my goodness. Yes, it was. She's up there with Sally from Texas Chainsaw Massacre of just the most amazing braless wonders I've ever seen.
Yeah. I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna go 4 more characters, and because everyone else is a zombie. Roy Engelman plays Roy, and Robert Phillip plays Emerson.
This is his only movie, so.
Yeah, and then Alex Baird plays the caretaker.
Okay.
I was like, what's his name? Because at one point, Alan refers to the caretaker, I think, by a specific name, but then that doesn't track later. So there's a few things that don't track later on.
Well, you know what doesn't track is that IMDb lists Orville, the corpse, as Oral. Ourille, when his name is Orville, and it's actually on the tombstone, it says Orville.
Come on, IMDb. Come on, Alan. Get on that. Get on IMDb. You can go fix that. It's your movie. You know you're proud of that baby. So Orville is played by Seth Scarley. Man, what a great performance by him. Actually, in fact, everyone that plays a zombie in this does a really great job, in my opinion.
Yeah, and he's fun. I like Orville. I think he's cool. I think he's really cool. He looks cool, and that's what you need, because for the most of the movie he's kind of lifeless and he's doing stuff, but there's still a cool look to him. Like, I like the way he looks.
Well, I believe Bob Clark and Alan Ormsby reused some of the techniques, like the zombie type makeup in Death Dream, reused it because one of the zombies is using like the same contacts, I think, that he has in that.
Okay.
Death Dream ranks up there, in my opinion, with Soul Survivor, as far as being like very spacey and quiet, atmospheric, I think is a good way to put it. But the zombie makeup in this looks to me like Return of the Living Dead, except, with the exception of like more of the standout ones, like the half corpse or the tar man. A lot of the zombies look like this from this. So, and then also Michael Jackson's Thriller, just rising up out of the grave, and this feels like they watched this and they totally lifted it, from this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense too when you think about it, because back in the 80s and everything, there was only, X amount of zombie movies out there. And I'm sure a lot of times they were like, let's go to the beginning. And then you go to the beginning, you have like Night of the Living Dead, you have this, maybe a handful of other things, but that's kind of it. So like, I can see how this would be influential back then, and it might have gotten, forgotten about now, but I don't think that its tendrils have completely rotted away, because I do think it's still felt, and I do think people still probably remember this movie fondly, in a lot of circles in Hollywood.
Yeah, so let's fondle the children. sorry. Let's bad choice of words there.
You've gotten us canceled.
Let's have some fun with Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things.
This is Alan. He's such a dear boy. Oh, this is Jeffy. He's so full of fun. Oh, this is Anya. Isn't she just the sweetest thing? And this is their new friend, Smedley. They're giving him a party. It's his coming out party. Oh, the children are having such fun. They're laughing and laughing. And it all began here, one foggy winter's evening.
1971. Oh. He ought to be ripe. It's party time. It's the shank of the evening. My friend Orville and I are having cocktails in 10 minutes at my island cottage.
Alan, you're not really going to take that thing back to the cottage.
I, Alan, take this body.
Yeah, and welcome to it. You deserve everything you're getting.
There's no business like show business like...
And I think, in time, we may get even closer. I'm going to take your scraps and feed them to my dog. Well, that's all right. Just keep a stiff upper lip.
Oh, yes, they had such a wonderful time. They laughed and laughed and laughed. That is, until Orville's friends dropped in. Then they screamed and screamed and screamed. Children had such a lovely time. It's too bad nobody ever told them children shouldn't play with dead things.
All right, the movie opens with no title, like no production logo or anything like that, just a straight up title card. Great neon font, really cool. Part of me was like, was this done after the fact? But it's really good looking, the neon green credits that roll.
Neon slime, baby.
Neon
Totally.
slime, yeah.
And I love it. My first note is a cool-ass title card, man. I dig it. And throughout this whole first part, it almost kind of like, It's kind of like I don't want to say it's like Prince of Darkness because it doesn't go as long as that. But we do have a pretty long opening that keeps getting intercut with the credits and everything, and Zach will walk us through it all. But I like how whatever the scene is, it'll pause while the credits are on it, and usually it pauses for some kind of like emphasis or something. And I dug it. I dug the hell out of it. And the second thing I'm just gonna say, blanket right at the top. I love the fact that they filmed this at night. And they didn't do day for night. And yes, sometimes you can't always see a lot, but I am a fan of that. I love actual night shots where you don't have everything lit, by giant fucking tungstens or something. And I hate day for night. So this is awesome. Right out of the gate, I can't see shit. I can't see the boat. I can't barely see them getting off of it, but I love it,
Yeah, there's going to be some times in the first maybe 20 minutes of this movie where there's some dialogue from the female actors, and I'm not sure if it's Val, I'm not sure if it's Terry, so I apologize if I mixed up the characters when I get to that point, but that's because it's so dark, and they're kind of walking together, and they're mumbling the lines, and it's hard to hear. Again, this is like This is almost like, well, this is like John Carpenter's Dark Star, you know, and if you want to listen to what we thought about Dark Star, go sign up for our Patreon Carpenter Factor exclusively on our Patreon, Podcasting After Dark, or Patreon/Podcasting After Dark, Patreon. Go sign up. It's worth it. Yeah, we talked, this is Bob Clark's Dark Star.
Yeah.
You know, it's his first experimental movie. This is THX 136 or whatever the hell that movie is. You guys know what I'm talking about. Anyways, first movie, student film-ish. He's probably still in college or right out of college. So,
yeah.
You know, so the movie opens with the crickets chirping. We're taken to this island. And on the island, we see this caretaker walking around. He's startled suddenly when he sees someone walking around in a graveyard on this island. And he says, "Good Lord, I think that one's alive." This is, and again, like Corey said, Bob Clark does this really cool thing where in between certain scenes, he'll pause the scene, show some credits. Sometimes it's longer. There's no rhyme or reason at times because it'll go longer than other scenes. But he'll slow down a scene in slow motion. It's very cool. It's very experimental, I think.
Yeah.
The caretaker walks towards the ghoul, puts his hand on top of the ghoul, and after he puts his hand on the ghoul's shoulder, the ghoul turns and looks at him and screams at him with his freaky face and fangs, and that's when you get the title card of Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. It is so intense, and it's so loud. It's so loud that my dog, who was sleeping on me at the time when I was watching it, jumped up and started barking at the TV because it was so intense.
Yeah, I had to turn the volume down later when the zombies were coming out because it was crazy. But I love the music, though. I thought the music was very good.
So creepy. It's so creepy. It has elements of Texas Chainsaw Massacre where it's like, you feel like maybe they're playing like a saw or something to get this weird wah-wah effect. It's very creepy.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's very experimental. It's very interesting. The music was done by Carl Zittrer, Zittrer. He also did the music for Black Christmas. He did some supervising music on New Jack City.
Oh, cool.
And he also did the soundtrack for Prom Night, 1980s Prom Night, which I'm not a big fan of.
Interesting.
Yeah, but yeah, the music in this, it's different, it's jarring, it's in your face, but it's on purpose, and I dig it.
Yeah, me too. Other than that, there's no music
in
between the shocking scenes. So the scene freezes on the ghoul's face. Then the scene goes back to normal, and you see the ghoul grabbing the caretaker, shoving him down into the ground. Caretaker's yelling. You cut to a bloody hand dripping over a gravestone cross. It's a gravestone, but it's actually a cross of Orville Dunworth, our featured zombie for this evening.
Yes.
So the entire cast of zombies at this point, so the credits roll, and then you see like this entire cast of people in the movie, and you're like, oh, that must be all the zombies that we're going to see later on in the movie, because there's like 20 or 30 of them.
Yeah. For a low-budget film, there are a lot of zombies, and you can tell that they actually have a lot of people to use later on. We'll talk about it. It's not like they just use the same like three guys and gals or something. They actually seem like they have a solid like 15 to 20 zombies out there.
again, it's impressive.
Yeah.
Like, you really have to take in the context. You know, this isn't like a big budget thing. This is probably shoestring, and it's amazing what they're able to accomplish with what very little they have.
Which just goes to show how good of a director Bob Clark is.
Totally. So the scene moves from there to, you see another ghoul approach this graveyard with a lantern, and cut to both. Now the other ghoul approaching. So there's two ghouls, one with a top hat, one with just a freaky face and a lantern, and they're looking in the grave of Orville. The grave has been dug up. The coffin is open. Orville's body's in there. The ghouls reach in the coffin to pull Orville's body out. The original ghoul with the top hat lays down into the grave. The other ghoul closes the coffin on him, and the credits continue to roll.
And of course, the first time I'm watching this, I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
I know, it's fucking freaky, guys. It's freaky.
Freaky deaky.
It's freaky deaky.
And to answer your other question, IMDb gives the budget estimated at $70,000. So this is an independent film, essentially.
Yeah. And bravo for it. 50 years later, we're talking about it.
Yep.
Cut back to the second goal. Suck my dick. Cut back to the second ghoul, dragging Orville off into the darkness as the camera pans on Orville's gravestone/cross. Cut to a skyline of Miami at night, and you see a shot of the island that the graveyard is on, and a sailboat with a bunch of people on it approaching. This, I was like, oh, this is like the Scooby-Doo gang almost, you know?
Yeah, and this is...
They're dressed like that.
Oh my God. What Alan is wearing is so fantabulous. His pants are wild. His whole outfit is wild, but it's 72, so you're still getting that late 60s aesthetic, you know what I mean? And hasn't quite turned into the 70s yet. But it's whoo-hoo. The outfits in this, it's worth watching for the outfits alone.
Also, too, it's worth noting that everyone looks normal. Nobody looks beautiful, you know, by social media standards, I guess. What a world we live in now.
I miss character actors. I miss ugly character actors.
So do I. By the way, I redid my so I do talk to text, and then I print it out, and then I made it super big font because I'm getting old.
Because you're getting old. Welcome to the party, pal.
Welcome to the party, pal. So on the boat is Alan, Anya, Val, Paul, Jeff, and Terry. Alan's the director and of this acting troupe, and he's yelling at Paul to fetch him a lantern, with Anya behind him looking crazed. Anya, by the way, will look crazed and mesmerized and maniacal through this 99% of this movie.
Yeah, and she does a lot of eyebrow acting. She does some crazy stuff with her eyebrows. And you know what? Aside from Terry's choice of tops, I'd say Anya was probably my favorite person to sort of like watch act. You know, she was just a lot of fun the entire time. Yeah, she chews up the scenery, but it just really works, you know? And I feel like they needed a weird character like this. And because the cover would lead you to believe that like Jeff is a crazed maniac, like in the cover art and everything, but Jeff's actually pretty normal. Like everyone here is pretty normal.
The cover art does not do it justice.
It really does.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Even the updated poster cover art that they do for the disc is not good. Both sides are not good. They make Orville on one side look like a total like a modern day zombie. It looks like a Photoshop thing that you'd see on a video at Blockbuster.
Yeah,
and then pretty bad.
Yeah, and then the original poster, like Alan looks maniacal, which is fine, but then Jeff, they made him look just really weird and like he's crazy or something. I'm like, but he's not. Like Jeff is actually sort of the funny guy in the movie, you know?
He's the character.
Yeah. Anyways, it's whatever. It's neither here nor there. It's just more my expectations going into it, you know?
Disregard the poster and love the movie.
Yeah.
So everyone's getting off the boat, marveling at the island. The only people that stay on the boat are Paul and Terry. Terry comments to Paul that the island doesn't smell too good. It doesn't smell too hot, sorry. Paul responds with that it's probably because they don't bury the dead too deep. She says, this place looks creepy. She asks if they're really going to dig up a dead body, and Paul says, that's what he said. Terry responds, well, it sort of makes him a ghoul, doesn't it? Paul doesn't want her to speak too loud because he doesn't want Alan to hear. Paul responds, basically like, don't talk too loud because you don't want to be an unemployed actress. So there's an underlying theme going through this whole thing that all these actors that work for Alan are afraid that they'll lose their job if they don't do what they're told.
And I guess Alan pays them? Like, they're not working for free or anything. So that's kind of the hold he has over them because they're not on this island to film a movie. They're there to do a magical ritual with him, that was my takeaway from it. They're not there to film anything, right? They don't have any filming equipment.
No, part of me was like, are they there to do research for an upcoming movie, or are they there to do basically a play?
Yeah, and that's it's never really explained, but you always get the idea that Alan is holding the employment over their head. Oh, well, if you want to leave, that's great, but then you're, basically you're fucked. You'll never work in this town again, that kind of thing,
Exactly. Alan comes back to the boat to put a cover on the sail, and he's looking at Terry. Well, he's looking at her rear end really sleazily while she and Paul pack up the sail.
And I'm not going to lie, Terry's got a flat butt, and that shot of it wasn't very flattering. And I'm like, oh, Terry, I'm sorry.
But, out of the three, he's probably like, well, this is the one that I haven't had sex with yet, and I'm going to.
True.
That's what he's about to allude to. Paul comments that he doesn't see any dead people. Alan says, oh, the graveyard starts right up around the bend. And Paul asks where the cottage is, and Alan responds a few hundred yards from the graveyard. Alan then says, Paul, I was thinking. And he looks at Terry kind of sleazily, and he says, since Terry is a new member of the company, sort of coming into her theatrical puberty, so to speak, I just might have to invoke that rule, a pretty primal juncture. Terry then comments, sort of like a slave master breaking in a new virgin, and Alan responds, well, crudely put, but basically accurate. And Paul says, well, you'll have to ask the virgin. And Terry turns and looks at Alan and says, you're about 10 years too late. I lost it when I was a brownie to an Eagle Scout. And Alan's kind of questioning whether that actually happened. She goes, Scout's honor. And Alan says, well, how many merits does an Eagle Scout get for seducing a brownie? And Terry says, well, you'll have to check your Boy Scout manual under things to do in the woods. Alan looks at her smugly and says, clever girl. He gets off the boat and walks away and tells everybody to grab their suitcases, and they head into the jungle. I love that. I'm like, clever girl. Oh, Jurassic Park coming.
Dude, my first thought was, oh, Steven Spielberg ripped that off. Or
fuck yeah, he did.
Because he even says it the same way. But the dialogue in this is fun. There's a lot of this. There's a lot of this wordplay going on. Later on, my favorite one was when Alan's like, well, you can get out of this with the claws, the grotesque claws or something like that, and then you can get away from my grotesque claws. So it's CLAUSE versus CLAWS. It's fun. The dialogue, for a movie that is very dialogue heavy, because the action kind of doesn't come until the last third of the film, the dialogue is fun to listen to because it's a lot of banter and a lot of back and forth, but sort of like verbal one-upsman type of thing. I very much enjoyed the dialogue aspect of this movie.
For me, this tracks with so many horror films from this time. It's a slow burn, it's a slow build. Yes. Reminds me of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I think we brought that up with maybe the last movie we did. You're getting to you know dread is coming. You just don't know when. And the acting is good. It's good acting. The writing is smart. You get the sense that this night is only going to get worse for them, and the whole thing's just going to fall apart. But who's going to fall apart first? We're going to find out. Again, clever girl. From there, you kind of cut to a spider eating a bug creepily. And then you see a big spider in a spider web, and you're introduced to the rest of the crew as they're carrying a big trunk of props throughout the woods. I'm going to refer to it as the woods, the jungle, the island from time to time. I'll be all over the place.
Yeah, my notes are divided from either abandoned house, graveyard, or woods. That's how I had to sort of mark it, you know?
Jeff, who's wearing a sweet, like, heart t-shirt, a t-shirt covered in hearts. I'm like, oh, did he make that? That looks like a made t-shirt by a 5-year-old. He says, hey, Alan, who's your travel agent? Count Dracula?
Oh, Jeff and his back hair.
Oh, his back hair and all that stuff. He comments that he feels like he's on the Late Late Show. And he goes, I whistle past the graveyard, but my lips are afraid to be separated. And then Val, throughout this whole... and then Paul comments, gee, I wonder if Tab Hunter started like this. Tab Hunter. Wow. Nice reference to Out of the Dark. Because wasn't Tab Hunter in Out of the Dark?
At the end, right? Wasn't he the guy at the end?
Yep.
Wow.
Terry,
this is quite the spider web that we're concocting.
I know, right? Everybody's kind of bantering back and forth, and you hear the birds hooting and the crickets chirping. It's very creepy.
Yeah, and my only note is that all their outfits are wild.
They're wild, and they're terrible looking.
Yes.
They're really gross in a funny way. They look up ahead as the graveyard is getting closer to them, and they see a light coming, shining from the distance. Paul yells out, what the hell is a street lamp out here? And Alan says, this used to be a resort island. Come on, follow me. And don't worry. They only drink kosher blood here. He says it with like this bad Dracula accent. So like, kosher blood here.
Is Alan... No, I guess this would be before it. Is like somebody like Coffin Joe, like sort of aping off of Alan's character in this?
I think maybe this is around the same time.
Okay.
The late night horror hosts existed, Zatcherly and stuff like that.
Okay.
And Alan has that vibe to him. He doesn't look like that, but the way he, exudes that acting.
Yes.
Everything is over the top. So you
theatrical.
know when I'm doing the Alan voice because I'll be very theatrical.
Yeah.
Because he continues, he says, don't worry, all the vampires have their health cards and they get inspected once a week. And Jeff says, says that Alan's weird. He ought to be in a wax museum somewhere. And then Val is like it's a running gag through this whole thing that she has a snarky kind of one line at the end every time. It gets a little old for me. Her character gets old for me, to be honest with you. Out of all the characters in this, she's the only one that I'm like, okay, you're not cool. Because she's like the old pro, I think, in this group.
And she's always riding Alan's ass and clearly like hates him. So you're like, why are you there, I guess? Yeah. And if it's a money thing, then, like if it's a job scenario, and she's pretty mean to Alan the entire time, then I'm like, why doesn't Alan just fire her? And then I'm like, with Val, I'm like, but then why don't you just quit? Because you clearly hate him. So it's really weird. I've never seen such antagonism from a paid employee, I guess.
Well, and I agree with you. And I would think in this modern day, we'd get less of that. But knowing how desperate actors are to this day, and any opportunity to act, and there's so much insecurity, and there's so much lust of wanting to be loved and seen and heard and known, like this opportunity to be an actor with a group. I think that overpowers or supersedes the abuse.
Yeah, because if they're all getting paid, that's a rare thing for an actor to have like a regular gig, like if you're a part of a troupe like this. So okay, I can see that. And actors are fucking terrible. So
yeah, they are. Not excluding myself.
Yes, excluding the ones that we know and love that are friends of ours.
Exactly.
All the other ones suck.
All the other ones suck, yeah. The ones we don't know suck. No. Yeah, so Jeff comments that Alan should be in a wax museum, and Val says, kneeling right under the guy in the black hood. And I'm like, wait, kneeling? Is he giving him head? Oh, he's getting his head chopped off. Okay. He's giving him another kind of head. They continue on through the island at night with their lanterns, walking through the graveyard. Alan smiles and says, well, there it is. Ulalume, the sanctum of Satan. And then Jeffrey says, is this a set you had built? Anya whispers, it's a masterpiece. The vibrations are powerful. And Paul says, why the hell would they build a graveyard out here? And Alan says, a logical question, to which I have a logical answer. The island, you see, and I tracked most of his dialogue because it's pretty important, most of his dialogue.
Oh, yeah, no, all Alan's stuff is exposition. Like, you need to know it.
Yeah, he says, the island, you see, has a history which I shall relate. But first, the 10-cent tour.
And I love Val's comment there. I actually wrote that down. But first, the 10-cent tour. And she goes, in which we get for only a quarter. And I was like,
that was funny.
I like that. That's clever.
That was funny.
That was a nice
Big
little jab.
fucking smirk on her face.
Yeah.
She knows it was good, too.
she did. She was like, that's gold, baby.
Yeah. Alan shows them the graveyard and gives them the tour. He shows them the pauper section where all the corpses there were buried recently. Alan says they just level off a section of ground and they throw them in there. And Terry says, you mean the people right under our feet were just put here? And Alan giggles and he's like, they're hardly cold. And a more delightful of gaggle of riches you'll never meet. Murderers, rapists. And Terry says, there's not any paupers buried in that section. And she, as the camera kind of pans through this cemetery, which is pretty big, by the way.
Yeah.
It's really big.
Mm-hmm.
And Alan says, oh, indeed there aren't. That is hollowed ground. Come, children, Uncle Alan is going to curdle your blood. And Val chimes in and says, Uncle Alan already does. Turns my stomach, too. And Alan takes him into the hollowed ground area. Alan walks them over to a section of the graveyard and stops and says, feast your eyes on one of the last vestiges of grace, one of the last flights of pure imagination. And the camera pans throughout the whole cemetery. And Jeff says, it's a boneyard. And Alan says, boneyard? Boneyard? What a travesty, a sacrilege, a match for a reduction of the sublime to the commonplace. Only a true ordinary mind, Jeffrey, can conceive such an idea. And Terry goes, oh, yeah.
And I like that piece of dialogue because when Jeff, it's a boneyard, the focus is on him, but Alan was in the foreground out of focus. And then they racked focus to Alan, and then Jeff was out of focus. I just want to call that out because it's kind of like one of the few neat little, camera tricks that they do. Everything else is pretty standard stuff. No big deal, not hating or anything. But I was like, I like that. That was a fun little camera movement, or not movement, but a camera thing that they did. And it just didn't happen too often.
No, you're right. And it's done really well.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is done very well. It's a low budget movie, but it looks really good.
Right. And here's the thing, guys and gals, the reason the lower the budget, the less movement you're going to see in movies because setting down dolly tracks and everything takes time and money. Even doing rack focusing like this, they didn't have to do that, but they chose to. But that, I guarantee you, just added a little bit of extra time on the setup for that shot and everything, and time is money. So at $70,000, you're not going to get a lot of fancy camera work like that because it just takes time, and they don't have it. So I was just want to call, I liked it when they actually did utilize something like that.
No, totally. Absolutely. Well, Terry comments that this whole area is kind of pretty. And then Alan groans and he goes, give me a moment. The magnitude of your similitude overwhelms me.
I love that phrase, by the way.
It's like basically, you're an idiot.
Yeah, I wrote it down too. Your magnitude of your similitude.
Paul says, okay, what the hell are you talking about? No, Paul then says, okay, what the hell is he talking about? And Jeff says, humor him. It's an old war injury. The guys sit down on top of the trunk while the ladies are kind of standing around watching Alan do his thing. Jeff looks at Alan and says, Alan, is it your hemorrhoids again? And everyone laughs.
I wrote that one down.
That's funny.
I wrote it down. I loved it.
Alan does not laugh. Alan says, your levity does not amuse me, Jeffrey. You're on sacred ground, my friend. For in this very crypt, A man who is malice apart the gods, who is unrelenting thirst, revengeance inflame the mind of Satan himself. Even now, demonic forces over here feeding upon the psychic force of that one act. Be still, listen. And the camera pans behind Alan, and behind there's a cool statue that's like watching them. It's very and behind that cool statue, something is watching them in the distance. It's the ghoul.
Yeah.
And you hear the music clanging. It's very creepy. Alan continues. He goes, even now, their malevolent gaze may be falling upon you. And Terry interrupts and says, I don't care if their gaze falls upon me, as long as they keep their pea-picking hands to themselves. Pea-picking hands?
Like pea pods? Or, yeah.
Yeah. Paul wants to continue pea-picking hands. Such a weird comment. Paul kind of scoffs, and he wants Alan to continue the tour. And Alan says, come, children, stay in single file and take hold of one another. There are things in the night waiting for children who stray out of the light. So again, children shouldn't play with dead things is in reference to them being the children, because Alan will call them children quite a few times in this film.
Yeah, multiple times. I picked up with that the first time I was watching. I was like, okay. That makes the name work for me, you know?
It totally makes sense. It's his children. He's the father. He's in charge, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And as much to their chagrin.
Yes. So they continue walking through this graveyard. You feel like they've been walking for miles, but they really haven't been walking that far. Val chimes in about Alan. She says, it's a good thing he's a director because, wow, what a bad actor.
No, he's great. I love Alan.
It's great. And Jeff says, I don't know. I kind of get the feeling that something's following us. And Val says, what, rot? And Jeff says, could be rotten. Suddenly he gets shushed by Terry. And she goes, did you hear that? And he goes, yeah, I think I did. And Val says, oh, brother, Alan would love this. Terry says, I know I heard something. Wait a minute. Suddenly, you cut to a second ghoul hiding in the forest. The ghoul with the lantern, not the buried one, watching them from behind tree branches. They all comment that they heard something, and Alan says, it's evil entities. I told you about them. Terry says, it's not evil entities. It's probably just one weird person. Paul says, what's the difference? We got a shotgun in here. Track that, by the way.
Yeah.
And Alan says, Paul, you can't scare off demons with a shotgun. Jeff says, I don't care about demons. I just hope we haven't offended the leader of some hippie cult.
You guys are the hippie cult.
You're the hippie cult. And this makes sense because, the early 70s, Charles Manson.
Yeah.
That was a big deal back then.
That was it was a very scary time back then with cults and everything.
And Alan goes, what a perfect place for a mass murder. How about this? A group of jaded young deviants, that's us, come to a burial island to dabble in witchcraft, try a few spells, but we stumble upon some really sick cult, which follows us along a deserted path until finally, and Terry's had enough at this point. She's like, I've had enough. And Val says, don't give him the satisfaction.
Terry's like, says, me and my braless boobs have had enough of this.
Yes, shake it. Alan says, what? I'm just being realistic. I mean, they're having trouble all over the world with grave robbery, ghouls, people breaking into cemeteries. Anya says, but we're the grave robbers. Who's gonna bother us? I need a sandwich.
Yeah, she's super thin. Not
very thin.
Yeah. Oops.
And after she says that, Alan goes, nobody but demons at this point. And Alan says, come now, children, it's late, and we've got a lot to do.
I wonder, the Satanic Panic didn't start off until the 80s. Were there, stories of grave robbers and whatnot back in the early 70s and stuff?
Well, I think Manson was still a very creepy thing.
Well, yeah, but that was 69, right? That was Summer of Love.
It was, but this movie was written in 1970 or
right.
1971.
Right, yeah.
So, right, and let's be honest, walking around in a graveyard at night on an island is very scary.
Oh,
I think if we did that in 2023, it would be very terrifying.
I've walked around the graveyard in Santa Monica on Halloween night, the one that was sort of in between your place and my place,
Oh, yeah.
And
14th, and
yeah, something like that. And and that was freaky enough. And that's in the middle of a city. So not to mention, technically on a deserted island that is only a grave, essentially. Yeah, dude, I can imagine that would be freaky as fuck.
And by the way, that area you're talking about, postal carriers will not deliver mail. At least there was a time when they would not deliver mail to that area because it was so crime-ridden.
Oh, wow.
This little pocket by the graveyard.
Yeah.
It's very creepy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That was my old hood, baby.
Right? You get a POV shot of the ghoul watching them as they continue deeper into the island. Cut back to Alan leading them to the cottage. Finally, they've made it.
Hey, everybody. Corey here. I just wanted to let you know that we'll be right back after these short messages.
Hey, everybody. I'm Tim.
And I'm Dean.
And we're the hosts of Talking Back. We're a retro-based podcast covering movies, comics, video games, and more.
Check us out every Monday where we hit the rewind button and dig into some of our favorite content from the past. We like to keep things fun, lighthearted, and informative.
Do you feel like you need more nostalgia in your life? Then check out Talking Back. We're available everywhere podcasts are found.
Have you been wondering where's the beef? Well, on our podcast, Throwback Trivia Takedown, you might just find that out, as well as some other things about the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
We're a nostalgic-based trivia show that pits two challengers head-to-head in a duel of the decades, with categories ranging from movies, TV, and music, to slang, food, and fashion. You're sure to get the best in retro-themed trivia.
So strap on your jelly shoes, grab a surge, and walk like an Egyptian to your favorite podcast app and check out Throwback Trivia Takedown.
I heard even Mikey likes it.
And now, back to the show.
Paul asks how long this place has been empty. And Alan says, about 2 years. He goes, the front door is pretty sturdy. They're trying to break in the door, but they can't. He goes, let's check the windows. By the way, there probably a mistake on their end, but this house is supposed to have been abandoned for a couple of years, and the light's on.
Yeah. There's a few gaffes, and I'll call them out, and it's okay. It's okay. No big deal. I think this movie was written in like 10 days or something, and it was probably filmed, I'm sure it was filmed in just a few weeks, maybe a month and a half or something. But it's A-okay because what it's doing is a lot of fun.
Dude, in everything I'm describing right now, like reading it back to you, I'm like, this is pretty fucking cool. Like, so they're trying to find a way to break into the cottage. And as they are, Terry asks, where is the caretaker now? And Alan says, oh, an insane asylum.
But that's a lie though, right? Because they've so the caretaker that
caretaker's got accosted by the ghoul. We don't know what's happened to him yet.
But is this supposed to be his house? And therefore, why would it be boarded up? You know what I mean?
Good point. Good point. And maybe he's just a really lazy, dirty guy.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
Possible.
Again,
maybe
don't take any of the gaffes we're going to bring up won't take anything away from this movie.
I didn't think about that, and that is a good thing to bring up because it looks like it's been abandoned.
Yeah.
With the light on.
Yep.
And so Terry's like, oh God, I'm afraid to ask after he says insane asylum. Alan says, it's quite ordinary, really. Killed his wife and 2 children. They found him babbling. And Paul says, why didn't they get another caretaker? And Alan says, oh, they did. Jeff comments that they can build a fire because they see a pile of wood. And Val says, that's the best news I've heard all night. The whole time they're having this discussion, you see like the camera from the inside of the house panning by the windows of them trying to find a way to break in. Alan calls Paul over to a section of like a window to kick in some shutters.
And you got to know that Paul's the hunky boy of this movie. He's supposed to be. Not in reality, he's not as hunky as the movie wants you to think that he's hunky. But you know what? The flaw really is the fuzzy hair. It's the humidity.
The fuzzy hair, and Alan at one point comments that he thinks he's going to be the next Brando. You get that vibe from him. Brando in a funhouse mirror.
Yeah.
But I love what Alan says. Alan says, Paul, do your athlete thing. And he has Paul like basically knocks the window open, knocks the shutter open to get into the cottage.
We like open palm karates it too.
Yeah, karate chop it. And he gets into the house, into the cottage, starts searching around while the others.
And then he screams, "Oh my God!" Ah! And everyone's like, "What the fuck's going on?" He fucking flips out like a motherfucker. And what is it, Zach? What's he flipping out about?
Spiders! I hate spiders!
He hates spiders more than Indiana Jones hates snakes.
Yes, this is more convincing than Indiana Jones hating snakes, I believe. Yeah, totally. Nice callback. Yeah, so Terry says, "You scared the hell out of us." And Paul's like, I'm sorry. And then he goes, "Why don't you come around to the front and I'll let you in." So Paul goes around to the front of the cottage and lets them in. They come in the front door of the house. You see a living room with a fireplace. There's a sheet over the chair. Like, people have not been living there, but apparently they have been.
Yeah.
If there's a caretaker. Maybe he just comes over at night. Who knows?
Okay.
Does that work?
That works for me. Yeah. He lives in Miami and he just like sort of boats over at night. Sure, I'll take that.
Right. Alan says, "Why don't we explore the quarters while Jeffrey builds us a fire? We may even come across a fuse box." Alan asks Anya to tidy up. She looks at him like a crazed cult girl and just smiles. Alan tells Jeff to repair the window that Paul knocked in. Alan tells Paul and Terry to accompany him to the ferret of the castle. And Jeff says, "Why doesn't Paul repair the window? He's the one that knocked it in." And Paul says, very fancy, he's like, "I'm going to ferret out the castle with the master."
Yeah, I loved that. I love the way he sort of mockingly talked like Alan talked.
Right? It's so funny. They walk over. Now, this is an interesting moment. They walk over to part of the living room where there's a doorway that's covered with a red sheet. This will come back later.
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to be the kitchen in this scene. And they open up the door and they see rats in the sink. It's very nasty looking.
Yeah.
Later, that becomes the back entrance of the house.
Oh my God, you're right. I didn't even fucking put that together. You're right.
Probably the biggest guffaw in the film.
Yeah.
Or gaff.
Okay. I can picture in my head. I didn't even pick up on that the 2 times that I watched it. Probably because I was just into the story. I was into the characters and into everything. Yeah.
To me, this is like when you're with your buddies when you're a kid and you're reenacting Night of the Living Dead and you're playing in the woods.
Yeah.
And you find an old cabin and you just have some fucking fun with it. This is what this movie reminds me of. It takes you back to the times when you could just play with your imagination and let go of mistakes.
Dude, my dad and my stepmom had this house in Virginia in Roanoke. Awesome ass, like, converted farmhouse. Mine and my sister's bedrooms were at the top of the silo. So that silo was converted into bedrooms. So they were, rounded and everything. But like I spent one summer with my friend Robbie, shooting like our own little movie. And this was like peak Cyborg. So I was already like, I love Cyborg. So it was like a post-apocalypse wasteland type of thing, but it was in the woods.
You loved Cyborg.
Loved, yes, past tense. And it's same vibe, man. So like I did that shit when I was a kid. I had my dad's, camcorder. I even did like in-camera stuff, like people would disappear. Like he got shot and he would disappear because I'd pause the camera and start it again. Bullshit like that. But when I'm watching this movie, I'm so glad you brought it up, because when I'm watching this movie, I get those same vibes. And I think the reason I don't give a rat's ass about any of the gaffes in this movie is because the heart is there. It's just, you know what I mean? Like the heart and soul is there, so I can look past the mess ups and the mistakes and everything.
Yeah, because there's like a fun vibe about this movie. Unlike Cyborg, there's not a fun vibe throughout Cyborg.
No.
Really not. Oh, man.
Oh, Cyborg.
Cyborg. If you want to hear... We recorded a little wrap-up bonus episode on our Patreon. If you're not a Patreon subscriber, consider it checking that out, because the little fun bonus is kind of a rant on Cyborg. Some fun facts that you may not have known about Cyborg. And if you did, well, this will just reiterate whether Cyborg's a good movie or not.
Yeah. And per our season 1 discussion, we did not love that movie. So
no, spoiler. So they see the rats in the sink. Terry says, "Oh, this is getting worse all the time." And then Alan says, "Well, if we come under siege and supplies run low, rats will do." And Val says, "Well, in your case, that would be cannibalism." Alan just giggles and they go to check upstairs.
Yeah. And I think that's when I took the note. I enjoy all the jokes. Like I enjoy like you said earlier, the dialogue is smart. It's quick, it's fast,
super smart.
And it's fun.
Yeah, and it's, again, 1972. You know, this isn't fucking Seth Rogen in 2020, you know, where we've like we come up with new jokes. This shit was at the time was probably fairly original, you know?
And it holds up really fucking well in 2023.
I agree. Before they go upstairs, Terry, Paul, and Alan, Terry says, "I'm still thinking about the Satan worshippers with the hatchet." And Alan says, "I'm not surprised. Did you read about those campers last week? A group of kids came over to their campsite and invited them for dinner. When they got to the kids' camp, they realized they were the dinner."
I love that one too. That was a fun little joke.
And Terry says, "Did they?" And Alan says, "They sure did." Then they get to the top of the stairs and they start like there's at the second level of the cottage, there's bedrooms. There's like maybe 2 or 3 bedrooms. Alan opens one of the doors. Paul then says to Alan, "I shouldn't ask, but what happened to the other caretaker?" Alan says, "He hanged himself in this very room, if I'm not mistaken." And he leads him to the bedroom that will later become the home for Orville.
Yes.
Terry says, "Now wait a minute. This is too much. You tell us the first caretaker murdered his family. The second caretaker hanged himself. I mean, this is like a grade B movie where the villain tries to drive the victims mad." And Alan says, "Oh, a villain. How flattering." Terry asks, "Do you have a large insurance policy on this company?" And Alan says, "No, I'm bumping you all off as my contribution to a good theater." Quick cut outside of the house. Through the bedroom window, you see the ghoul lurking in the shadows. Paul and Terry go downstairs, and Alan is the one who's looking out the window, realizing that there's somebody out there.
Yeah. I like that shot. It's a cool shot, too.
Very cool shot. Cut to a roaring fire, Jeff and Val sitting by the fire.
And Jeff says, "A fire a day keeps the ghosts away."
Anya appears and says, "Why would you want to keep them away? Wouldn't it be beautiful to be in the presence of a ghost from another plane?" And Val says, "You're serious about that?" And Anya says, "Yes, of course." Jeff says, "Well, I don't know. I always heard that ghosts have a way of being downright nasty." And Anya goes, "Oh no!" And at the time, she's like holding a bunch of fucking cans of food, and wherever maybe it was in the trunk.
Can I? Okay, I'll stay in a second. Keep going.
She's shaking her head. She's like, "It's not true. What people perceive as evil in ghosts and spirits is only a reflection of their own malevolence and fear. People create their own demons." Val says, "That's not very original, Anya." And Anya says, "Something is going to happen tonight. I can feel it." And she looks super excited.
Yeah, foreshadowing
eager
right
psycho.
there.
Yep. And she walks into the kitchen.
So, Zach, we've seen a lot of Anya-type characters in movies. Have you ever known someone like that in real life? Because I haven't.
Part of me was like, was my ex-wife a little bit like that? Maybe just a little bit. No. Yeah, I have. I have, actually.
So they exist? Like people like this exist?
Oh, yeah. A good friend of mine had a girlfriend who felt that she and he were destined to be together. Magic brought them together. The cosmos brought them together. She'd show up at his house at like 2 a.m, crazed out of her mind.
Was this Terry or Matt's girlfriend?
No, this is my buddy Daniel, who was a little wacky too. He was a wacky dude too. He had. That's a whole other story. Actually, one of the movies in your stack is like a tribute to him.
Okay.
If we ever get to it down the road. But man, she showed up at his house at like 2 a.m, wanting to have sex with him. we must do it now. The cosmos willed it. Like shit like that.
Wow.
She was really fucked. And then when he was like, you know, again, he was out there. She's like, she's wing-ding, man. She's loopy. Like he was trapped in the 70s, you know. She's wing-ding, man. She's loopy. I can't deal with her. I'm like, well, did you tell her that? And he's like, well, you know, I think she got the hint. And I go, what? You gotta like tell her. And she flipped out. She called me. Well, Daniel won't talk to me. Like, oh my God.
Oh God. Okay.
She was fucking crazy.
So
So long story short, yes.
Okay. Interesting. I knew you'd have something horrific to say. Some sort of trauma
Of
to
course.
say.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course. It you know, it tracks, right? It tracks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've always got a crazy person in mind.
I mean, yeah, dude. I love it.
So crazy Anya gets up and she goes into the kitchen. Before she does, Terry stops her and says, you know, I wouldn't go in there. Place is full of rats. And Anya says, oh, they don't bother me. Rats don't mind people if you don't mind them. Terry looks at Paul and they giggle and they walk over to the fire.
Yeah, and this is when I noted that Anya does a lot of eyebrow acting. Like as she's talking, her eyebrows go up. Like both go up together, then they go down. Then the left one goes up, and then the right one goes up. It's a wild scene, man.
It's wild.
Her eyebrows are wild. I love it. But that's the thing. That's what. You know, yes, she's making choices as an actor, and they're kind of silly. But you know, watching it. That's the interesting shit. Like she's doing the interesting shit. So like when she's talking, I can't look away, you know? And yet I'm like, oh, she's weird. But at the same time, I'm like, but it's kind of mesmerizing, you know? And that's the interesting choices that keep you sort of coming back and rewatching it. And you and I talk about that so much on this podcast. Like the movies that I think that endure are the ones that have these just silly moments and just weird choices that maybe on paper you're like, why are you doing that? But you watch it and you're like, yeah, that works. Yeah, that's more fun than if you just delivered the lines normally, you know?
Yeah, and I think if this movie was a modern film, it wouldn't work.
Right.
It wouldn't be funny.
No.
Like but because it's a time capsule film, like The Warriors, for example, it gets a pass on things that would be silly now.
Yeah. But those silly things make it so entertaining.
Totally. I agree. And its intention is to be silly.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah.
And Paul says, well, I've never met a rat that I didn't like. And then Jeff starts singing a song because at this moment, I'm like, oh, fucking actors. Like everybody's got to have their moment. Everybody's got to have their one line, you know, oh my God. I went to a fucking party one time in LA. This guy, he was like the head acting teacher for a very prestigious school here. And he had just gotten a role, or he was in the middle of making a movie with a very prominent actor. And they had just gotten the music supervisor from a popular musical. And every young starving actor was there. And they're like singing the main song from this musical that the guy had done to the acting teacher, like, look at me, look at what I can do. And I'm like, you guys fucking suck. Like, oh my God, stop, you know. Oh, let me do this for you. I'm an actor. Let me show you how good I am. Oh my God. So anyways, yeah, Jeff is doing this. Let's take a rat to lunch today. Show him that he's one of the bunch today. I'm like, shut the fuck up, dude. Just build the fire. Stop being an actor. Suddenly, Alan appears down the stairs and says, all right, children, story time. Uncle Alan's going to chill your marrow and make you squeal and get all wet and get goose pimples. I love that. Chill your marrow.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fucking awesome line. Anya looks excited like she's going to blow her load. And she approaches him. Alan walks over to the big hope chest, like the big trunk, opens it and pulls out the shotgun. And then Paul says, what's the shotgun for?
And I love when like he pulls it out and he like loads it and kind of, you know, moves it to his left. It's like aiming right at Terry's face. And you can tell that the actress like kind of moves to the side because she's like, Jesus Christ. Yeah, you need a little bit more gun control, you know.
By the way, Paul's the one that asks what the shotgun's for. And didn't he say earlier that we had a shotgun when they're walking in the forest?
Yeah. Written in 10 days. Not the tightest script.
No.
Especially when Alan calls it a grimoire when it's pronounced grimoire.
There you go. Maybe that's what I wrote down too. Alan says, just in case any little ghosts trying to break in here and gobble up my children. I'm like, oh, That's when you said earlier it didn't work, but whatever. And then Jeff says, you got any silver buckshot in there? And Alan says, no, but I've got this. And he pulls out his sorcerer's source box, the warlock's war chest, the conjurer's conjugation. And Val says, the nincompoop's knapsack.
I love that. That was a good line.
It is. Alan says, if things get really desperate, I'll just have you reenact some of your past performances. Not even a thing from the blackest of hell could stand up to that.
Burn.
And then Terry, sick burn. Terry's all excited. She's like, what else is in the chest? And Alan goes, oh, I've got many things. For instance, this. And he holds up a big wreath of garlic to ward off evil entities. And then Terry, makes her little kid voice. She's got to show off her acting, too.
Yeah,
I've got to do my acting.
Her kid voice freaked me the fuck out. I hated it.
Gee, Mr. Wizard, how do you get the litmus paper to turn blue?
And Alan says, the same way I get the egg into the Coke bottle, bitch. It's fucked. That was my favorite moment in the scene. Where, don't you fucking act. Don't fucking act for me. You're already hired.
I will tell you when to act. I am the director.
I'm the director. Now go to Nexium and get your tattoo on get your branding.
Oh, God. Jesus Christ.
I mean, it's all the same.
I know. Because, if this really existed now, this would just become Nexium. He would just turn this troupe into Nexium.
Yeah, yo, guys, if you don't know what we're talking about, go watch The Vow on HBO. It's fucking wild.
Yeah.
It's wild how desperate people are for attention and neediness. Like, the guy who's the perpetrator against these women is a piece of shit. But you know what? The writing was on the fucking wall.
Yeah, and
I've known people like this.
Yeah, and it's got the chick from fucking Smallville joined the Nexium group. She was his right hand man too.
Yep, right hand brand.
There you go. Jesus Christ.
Anyways, I love his Coke bottle bitch lines. Great. Everyone laughs. Alan holds up a big book and says, this is the treasure of treasures, and he gives it to Anya. He says to hold it. Jeff asks what it is, and Alan says, later. First, this, and he grabs his robe. It's a blue wizard's robe. Terry asks where she can get one of those, and Alan says, on the other side of eternity, my dear.
I'm going to say that when someone says, oh, I like that. Where can I get that? On the other side of eternity. I love that. That's a great line, actually.
Cut to Val, chilling on the fucking couch like a slouch.
Like a villain.
Looking all smug, saying, talk about my performances. Would have been funny if she was drinking, too.
Yeah.
Alan asks what time it is. Paul tells him it's 11:30. Alan says, perfect. Paul says, perfect for what? Alan says, midnight is the optimum time for any summation. Paul says, wait a minute. Just what exactly are we summoning? I think it's about time the wizard came clean. Alan giggles and says, ooh, that's very poetic, Paul, in a prosaic kind of way. Paul says, well, we may not be poets, but what we do have is a right to know what's going on.
And does Paul have a New York accent sometimes?
He kind of does, because, again, he's a fan of Brando. He wants to do that tough guy. He more looks like, instead of a Brando, he looks like Paulie from Rocky. Like a young Paulie.
He's in shape. Offense. I mean, that's, makes it sound like he's fat, but you're right. He's like an in shape young Paulie. He's not
you look
Brando.
At the guy and you're like, he's a Mama Luke. He's gonna, he's what's gonna happen to this dude.
Yeah.
So, he's not gonna, well, he could turn into Brando. Alan says, oh, the people speak. A little democratic action, eh? Let me remind you, my darlings, that this company is not a democratic enterprise. It's a feudal state. I rule it. I own it. I own you. And the camera pans and looks at all the actors looking all pissed off. Alan says, the only difference between this feudal state and any other feudal state is that here the serfs, that's you, can quit anytime you like. Anybody want to quit? He looks at everyone. No one responds.
And I wrote this down. He goes, oh, the revolution is dead. I loved that, dude.
Same, dude. It's
He's such a dick.
So
I loved
great
Alan.
because he's like, "You're trapped here."
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, we don't need to sort of know the particular. They don't explain everything up front, but through the course of the film, you get the idea that they're like, we need this job, we can't leave, type of thing.
Yes. So finally, he says, I will divulge all. He asks Anya for the book, and he says, "This is a what is it? What is it, Corey?"
He pronounces it a grimoire, but it's pronounced grimoire.
Okay. Which is a book of ancient spells, descending in a direct line from the Druids in the old religion. He opens the book and says, "This book has counter spells, conjugations, summations." As he's flipping through the pages, he says, "Here is the spell I have chosen for our purposes." Anya looks like she's just going to melt all over his book. "Simple steps and simple words necessary to enable a master to call for the dead from their graves, to bend their wills to his and serve him always in this world and the next." Alan continues and says, "This island meets the unique stipulations required for a summation. An evil was committed here. A curse lies upon it, and there are fresh cadavers available and waiting for us, and it's nearly midnight, so I suggest we go and exhume our corpse." And they walk out to the cemetery.
Now, I don't know if you wrote down this piece of dialogue later, because it's kind of in passing, but Alan mentions that midnight is the witching hour, and that's wrong. It's 3 a.m. is the witching hour. Just little things. It's okay. It's okay. My cult...
Gee, Mr. Wizard, will you tell me what else is the witching hour? What happens if I explode inside of a pentagram? What will that grant me?
Gee, Mr. Wizard, will you tell me more about the occult?
No, bitch.
Again, all these gaffes, they're no big deal. They're no big deal at all. I need something to talk about. I need something to contribute to the conversation here,
Wait till we get to TV Obscura and we talk about wrestling, and Corey's like, "I just need something to talk about, guys. I don't know what the fuck you and Diallo were talking about right now." I almost never mind. As they're walking, Jeff asks Alan how much time they get for grave robbing.
Oh, I love this. I love this piece of line because they hang you, and he goes, "Ah, a suspended sentence." I was like, "Yeah, fucking yeah!" I'm sitting here. First time I watched this, I'm smoking a fucking joint, and I'm like, "Yeah, I love that fucking joke. That's a good one."
Not only that joke, but right after that, what happens? They walk by a statue, and Jeff says,
"Avon calling."
Ding dong, Avon calling.
And that was terrible.
Back to our sledgehammer, but it harkens back to our Sledgehammer TV Obscura.
Yeah.
When Sledgehammer dropped the ding dong, Avon's calling line. And I'm like, fuck yeah, dude, Avon's calling again.
Dude, how bad was that back in the day? Was that like Avon people?
Avon?
Yeah, like fucking Jesus. If everyone's making jokes about it, how bad was it?
I don't remember that as much as I remember Mary Kay cosmetic cards being pink.
Oh, they still are.
Remember those?
That's still a thing.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Oh.
It is? You will still see Mary Kay cars, yes.
Oh. Jesus. Okay.
Jeez.
Well,
Jesus.
That was disgusting and ridiculous.
I'm going to be a millionaire. I own my own business.
Yeah. And Corey can speak to this. That's what Lyft said to everybody. That's what Uber said to everybody. Newsflash. You'll be their slave.
Newsflash, you'll die. You'll spiral down into the darkest point of your entire life that you've ever had.
But for everybody that's doing it, good luck to you.
Fucking good luck, men. Carol Crabbit, good luck, men.
Here's a can of chip beef.
Guys and gals, go check it out if you don't know.
Oh my God, about. TV Obscura, future TV Obscura, our favorite check it out episode.
Oh my God, we'll just quote the whole fucking thing the entire time like we did with Fort Fairlane.
Bro, we might have to record that when I go up to Oregon. Just do a fucking one-off.
Or when I come down to visit you. Yeah, exactly.
Word. And you just spend the night.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right. They show up at Orville's grave, and Alan reads, Orville Dunworth, 1929 to 1971. Jeff and Paul have the big trunk with them, and Alan instructs them to dig up the grave. Alan asks where Anya is, and Terry says she's back by the crypt. Jeff and Paul start digging up a grave. I'd be a little questionable about that. Cut to the grave being dug up. Alan walks over. Either they cut the scene or the scene was insignificant because Alan shows back up with Anya. The dirt is now dug up. The coffin is there. Remember what's inside it, guys. Before they open up the coffin, Jeff quips, hope he doesn't mind us dropping in like this. They open up the grave, and the ghoul is inside. The first ghoul who attacked the grave robber is lying in the coffin with the top hat. They're all shocked. Jeff says, it looks like Dracula. Alan says, decomposition does strange things to people. Alan tells him to hold him up. Jeff says, do you want me to touch that thing? Alan says, he won't bite you. Jeff says, oh, I wouldn't bet on it. Alan just wants him to lift him up to the rim and says, Paul and I will haul him out. Jeff goes down to grab the ghoul, and suddenly the ghoul lurches alive and grabs Jeff by the neck, screaming, and everyone else is screaming. I mean, I would be terrified if that happened. That is a terrifying moment. That is a I need therapy for the rest of my life moment.
I would have done the same thing Jeff did, which was pee my pants and then punch the ghoul in the face multiple times. And if I wasn't in Jeff's position, I would have done the same thing Paul did, which was immediately go into a karate stance.
Karate man.
Karate.
So while this is going on, the ghoul is choking Jeff. Terry is shocked, and she's standing by other graves, and the other second ghoul comes out of nowhere with his big cloak, and he wraps it around her, and he pulls her into the bushes. She's freaking the fuck out, too. I would be terrified as well.
Fuck yeah.
That's going on. Anya's looking on, amazed and dazed. Jeff now is punching the ghoul in the face. The ghoul starts whining, and you realize that it's not a ghoul, it's an actor. And Alan's giggling the whole time. Val's watching from another grave. You see the ghoul ripping his makeup off, revealing that it's their friend Roy. He spits out his fake teeth. And Jeff goes, Roy? And Roy says, course I am, you crazy bitch. Roy yells at Alan. He goes, Alan, this crazy man bloodied my nose. He talks just like that, by the way. I'm not putting on an affect.
No. Zach's not, trying to be funny or anything. That is how he talks.
Him and, well, in just a minute, you'll meet the other one. Alan's giggling away, and then you hear screaming from behind them, and it's Emerson, the second ghoul, running towards them with a very fanciful yelp like, ah! And he's being chased by Paul. Suddenly, they all realize that this second ghoul is not a ghoul. He's their friend Emerson. And Paul gets upset, and he's like, this isn't funny. We're on the verge of a genuine tragedy here. Alan's giggling away. Everyone else is looking pissed and shocked. And this is when Jeff, who's still in the coffin, who's sitting up on the grave, sitting down where the grave's been dug, and he goes, I peed my pants. I peed my pants.
He says multiple times, I peed my pants.
Peed my pants.
And that would be my exact response if I peed my pants in that scenario, which I would have peed my pants, and then I would have spent the next 15 minutes repeating, I peed my pants. It's like the most true dialogue I've ever heard in a movie.
Oh, it's fucking great. And then Paul, because he's a fucking genius, goes, you mean this was a gag? Duh. And Alan goes, no, these are two real ghouls. They just had a change of heart, that's all. Emerson says, yeah, we're trying to go straight. And you know what he means by that. They're both gay. Emerson and Roy are gay. And they even call themselves out later, too.
And I just want to call out on IMDb. I just want to read this real quick. The 1990 guidebook, Uranium Worlds, A Guide to Alternative Sexuality in Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror by Eric Garber and Lynn Paleo lists Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things as one of the first horror movies to show positive, though stereotyped, gay male characters who also have an important role to play with the story. And I was like, okay, that's really fucking cool, actually.
It is really cool. I don't think they're a stereotype because I've known gay guys like this. I've had friends who acted just like. I get it. I don't think they're that over the top, actually.
I mean, yeah, whether you want to call it a stereotype or not, we can tell that they, by their affectations and everything, that they're supposed to be gay, and maybe the actors are gay. We don't know that either way, one way or the other. But the nice thing is, no one in the movie has a problem with them being gay. It's never about that because they're clearly all friends. They know each other.
Yeah.
And yes, these two guys have a story role in the movie and everything. So, I mean, that's awesome. I think it's really fucking cool that Bob Clark did that.
I totally agree too. I don't think it's like cliche or makes fun of them and all. I think they're just part of the acting troupe.
Right.
And now they're pissed because they've been
of course said by two straight men, so we don't, technically,
True.
but at the same time it's seems cool to me,
Yeah, it seems cool to me too. And I hope people don't I hope no one's offended by it.
Yeah. Because Zach has to do the voices when he does their lines.
Yeah, cuz So, it's funny because while this is all going on, Roy is complaining that his face is all bloodied, which it is.
Yeah.
And Emerson's cleaning the blood off his face, and he's like, "Hush, darling, I'm putting you in for a Purple Heart."
And Anya's putting the makeup on her, like the mask on herself,
skin.
And it looks like Leatherface's mask. And this is
totally.
What year did we say Texas Chainsaw was like 77, 78? I mean, it was
Chainsaw is 74, I think.
Okay, but still, this is before that.
Before that.
Yeah.
And obviously before Texas Chainsaw, Chainsaw was 74. Chainsaw 2 was like 86 or something like that. And that reminds me of Chainsaw 2 when what's-her-face, the radio DJ, puts Leatherface's skin on her face.
Yeah, yeah.
Almost like shot for shot.
Yeah,
very
because
similar.
Because even Anya's like making like a frowny face as she puts it on. It's very interesting. Again, Anya's kind of my favorite. I mean, I like everybody in this, but Anya's sort of my favorite actor to watch.
Yeah, me too. All the while this is going on, Jeff continues to say, "I peed my pants."
Yeah,
I peed my pants.
I mean,
because
it's the best dialogue. It's so human. It's so accurate.
It's so great. Paul says to Alan, you got a weird sense of humor. Doi, part 2. And Val's like, "Oh, come on, let's give the devil his due." "Very good, Alan." She actually looks amused at this point. She tells Jeff to get out of the grave, and he's saying again, "I peed my pants. I peed my pants." And Val says, "We all did. That was really masterful." Alan bows. Val asks how long this took to be put together, and Alan says, "Emerson and Roy came out yesterday and set it up the day before." Val says, "That was very impressive." Val asks Emerson how long his makeup took. And he goes, "About 3 hours." And Roy says, "Mine took 4 because I'm the lead." And Emerson says, "That's because you're stupid enough to let yourself be buried in a filthy hole."
Yeah, seriously, dude.
Paul asks how long he was in there. And Alan goes, "Oh, about an hour. You can last several hours." And Val says, "Only a truly sick mind could conceive such a plot." And Alan says, "Well, thank you." And Val says to Emerson and Roy, "You gave the best performance of your entire careers." And Jeff's on the verge of tears again, saying, "I peed my pants." And Val says, "Will you quit giving us the play-by-play of your flabby bladder?" There's a quick cut to the gravekeeper, or the caretaker, tied up by a tree with a gag in his mouth. Well, he's not tied up to the tree. He's laying next to a tree because he's able to get up later.
Yeah. Poor bastard.
Poor bastard. And next to him is the dead body of Orville.
Also, poor bastard.
Yeah. Emerson says, "My God, you should have seen the creature that we took out of that hole. I nearly fainted. He's really dead." Well, doi. Val says he was probably a dishwasher. Cut to Anya holding up Roy's mask at this point, like the Texas Chainsaw moment we talked about. And then Val's kind of pissed, and she says to Alan, "That's a far cry from robber barons, rapists, and demons. there's a bunch of plumbers and panhandlers buried out here. Pretty punk stuff to tempt Satan with. And Alan says, not quite so. I'm sure there were quite a few murderers and other assorted types that will please the master. Alan asks Emerson what time it is. 5 to 12. Alan says, the witching hour.
Wrong.
It's not.
Wrong.
Wrong. And then he says, we won't have long to wait. Alan asks Emerson what they did with Orville. Paul says, look, the joke is over. I'm taking her out of here. And Alan says, we'll have a good swim. And don't forget to drop your script off at the theater when you get back. And Terry says, it's okay, Paul. It scared me. That's all. I'm all right now. Paul says, look, this has gone far enough, man. And Terry says, look, it's my job. I don't want to be fired. And Alan says, if I made her crawl in that coffin and spend the night with Orville, you wouldn't lift a finger to help if you thought it would cost you your job. And you know why? Because you're headed for the top. The new Brando actor stud, bon vivant. All men bow. You know what you are? You're a slab of meat I hired to dress my stage. And I like my sides of beef to hang quietly in the corner until I need them. So why don't you shut up?
Damn.
Paul looks fucking defeated at this point.
He looks completely fucking deflated. He's just like Mrr. And
Val says,
and if anything, this is just, a commentary on capitalism and everything,
But again, it's a commentary on the acting world.
Yeah.
You will fucking do whatever you need to, especially back then. You would fillet who you needed to.
Yep.
You would lay down who you needed to. You've heard the stories. They're all true, and they continue to be true. They just don't get talked about as much anymore.
Yep.
Sad but true.
Welcome to the party,
sad
pal.
But true.
Sad but true.
Val says, of course they'll stay. They wouldn't miss a chance to see you square off with the devil, or maybe eat a little crow when your performance gets a big yawn. Alan says, if we judge by past performance, I don't think I'll bore anybody.
Okay. That's it. I think, and then she's like, what'd she say? Like you don't live in the past reviews or something like that.
Exactly.
And I love that. They just they shoot stuff back and forth, dialogue back and forth. And sometimes Val wins, sometimes Alan wins. And yeah, it's always a tete-a-tete, Is that the right phrase?
Tete-a-tete.
Yeah.
Yes. A tete.
Tete-a-tete.
And at this point, Val's like, do you think we can take it? Basically asking the group if they're going to do this, or are they going to revolt, right? And Terry's like, I'm not too worried. And Val asks Jeffrey if he's down to do this act that Alan wants them all to do. And Jeff says, I don't care. Give him hell. Anybody got a dry pamper?
he peed his pants. He doesn't give a shit at this point.
I peed my pants.
I peed my pants.
And so Val asks Roy and Emerson if they want to participate in Alan's little soiree. And Emerson says, as long as we don't have to dig him up. And Alan says, all right, it's time to go and drag Orville over here. Cut to Anya lying in Orville's coffin. The rest of the actors gather around the coffin to look on Anya. Alan asks what she's doing, and she says, I'm gazing at the scroll of immortality.
And he's like, well, when you get to the end of the chapter, can you get out of there?
Get out of the hole and get the book and the
I love the fact that she said, the scroll of eternity, the scroll, whatever, a scroll of immortality, and he immediately improvs. And he's like, well, get to the end of that chapter. Why don't you get out of here,
Right.
Again, the dialogue, because guys and gals, the action picks up in the last 20 minutes of this movie. So this movie makes or breaks. It hinges on the entertainment, for an hour prior, because the movie's only an hour and 27 minutes. And it's it hinges on the dialogue and everything beforehand. And all of that works because the dialogue is so quick, is so sharp. I mean, fuck, man. I'm not going to say it's something you'd see on Arrested Development, but it's better than something you'd see in a generic horror movie, it's fast. It's that fast kind of dialogue, that back and forth kind of dialogue that, you love and we see nowadays. This feels very contemporary with the dialogue. It's the clothes and the hair that screams 1972, not the dialogue.
this would be a nice double bill with Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
Because, like something that I could see this being influenced by Shaun of the Dead as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of quipping back and forth in Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant too. And so I'm sure Edgar Wright was influenced by this.
Oh, I'm sure all of the filmmakers we've discussed have seen this movie.
Totally. Anya then says, she's like, it's really nice in here. And Alan goes, great, we'll make it for a weekend sometime, all right? He tells her to get out of the coffin. He has Emerson and Roy bring Orville over. And Alan inspects him and he goes, he's magnificent. Anya wonders what he's thinking. Roy and Emerson take Orville and drape him over his own gravestone cross. He's really stiff, which is really effective.
Yeah.
I don't know if they tied like a board to his back or something, but he looks like he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, the guy that plays Orville does a great fucking job. Do you think he died by the bullet wound to his head? Is that what that hole is right here?
Oh, yeah. For years, I thought that was a mole, but that makes sense that it's probably a bullet hole.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or it's a mole.
Yep. Alan gets into Orville's grave. The coffin has been closed now. And he takes a piece of chalk and he draws a pentagram on top of the coffin.
He draws a fantastic pentagram in one go without ever picking his chalk up. And I was like,
impressive.
I was like, yeah, that was impressive. And I was like, I know that actor had to have practiced that because he did it all in one go. And it's like proportionally good. Like it's a good drawing. And I was like, yeah. Thumbs up.
Yeah, it's very impressive.
Satan will be very happy with that.
Satan will, yeah. I mean, honestly, and I'm not going to lie, because I wrote most of his chant down, and I interrupted the chant with describing what's going on in the scene. But I'm like, I hope I'm not invoking a demon into our home. Because this tracks. This is pretty fucking realistic to me. Anyways, he puts the candles down on every point of the pentagram, black candles. And he asks Anya for an envelope. Jeff asks what's in the envelope, and Alan says it's the dried blood of an unborn infant. And he giggles and he goes, but don't worry, no murder was committed. It's just that every summation demands a sovereign ingredient to a sacrifice. He gets out of the grave. He walks to the back of Orville, dribbles the dry blood over Orville, and instructs Jeff, Paul, Emerson, and Roy to grab shovels. He tells them to follow him and break the earth over the graves, basically shoveling a little bit of dirt out from every grave that they walk by, and he will anoint them as prescribed. As they walk off, he sprinkles the dry blood in basically all the holes.
Holes.
Holes. Dried blood. As they're doing this, you cut to Anya inspecting Orville's face, touching his face, looking mesmerized. Val and Terry are watching her and says, any second now, I expect to see her float off.
Because she's an airhead.
Right. Cut back to Paul, who's digging into a grave. Suddenly, he falls into the grave as he's digging. He freaks out. Alan inspects the body, and he goes, God, it's beautiful. And Paul says, it's fine. It's just a root broke it open. And Alan says, this is a sign. They will rise. This is a sign. Paul says, bull. A root undermined the coffin. That's all. Alan says, no, it's a sign. And he gets super excited. He's like, it's going to happen, right? You do a close-up shot of the zombie, this particular zombie. His skin is so tight and dried off that the skin around his lips is gone. You just see his teeth like the character from They Live, like the alien from They Live.
Yeah.
He's got his hands over his body with a big ring. This will come back into play. It's a very creepy looking zombie.
My favorite zombie is the one with the mustache, the mutton chops, the old one.
Oh yeah, I like the soldier too.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah. They go back to Orville's grave, and Jeff asks what happened back there, and Alan says, oh, never mind. He gets back into the grave on top of Orville's coffin. The candles are still lit on the pentagram. Anya gives him the book. He instructs everyone to kneel down around the grave and to clasp their hands together in an inverted prayer. When they did that, I'm like, this is the church. This is the steeple. Open it up. Here come the people. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, I can't do it. I'm trying to do it now.
He asks them to open their minds, remove all doubt, but be on your guard. Let nothing take hold of you. Let nothing into your body.
Open your mind, Quaid.
Ooh. Cutting to Anya's face looking psychotic, Alan says, "From this time on, you must be silent." And he starts chanting from the book. "O great diviner, master lord of the netherworld, lord of night, prince of darkness, despoiler of light, diviner of powers, redeemer of passion, crucible of flesh." There's a quick cut of Orville draped over the gravestone. Cut back to Alan saying, "By the blood incarnate, by the flesh made proud, by the soul devourer of itself, by these words we do implore, by these deeds we do supplicate, and call upon the grace of the Lord Almighty of the underworld." Camera cuts to all of the faces of the children looking nervously. Alan continues, "Release the souls of thy servants who lie here unredeemed. Release them to serve thy servant, bending their wills always to his, thus to thine own." The camera pans all across the graves of the gravestones. Alan continues, "By the blood of the babes unborn, by the inversion of the Savior, by the bond of thy own hand, we do entreat thee, deliver them upon us, to command in thy name, to serve our will thine own, by Lucifer, Beelzebub, Mephistopheles, Arcanes, and all the underlords we do entreat, let them rise up, spirits Aquitania, Solvetia, let them rise up, Satan, God of all." The music intensifies. Suddenly, when Alan stops, you can hear nothing but crickets chirping. And then Jeff says, "They must be at the lunch." And everyone giggles. And Alan just tells him to shut up.
I love Val. Can I do Val's line here?
Of course.
She goes, "Your summonation is a bummer." She goes, "It takes an artist to deal with the devil."
Oh my God.
It's a bummer.
So fucking funny. And Alan's pissed. He's pissed. And he's looking at Orville and he says, "You're nothing but a cheap plastic fraud, Satan. You phony. You liar. You sorry sot. I paid my money and I expect my merchandise. You cretinous clown. You don't have any power." Everyone looks amused while Alan looks pissed, and he continues. He goes, "Cheap, chiseling con artist, 2-bit penny ante potion peddler." Val says, "You lose, Alan. You lose." Looking down on him in his grave. And that's when she says, "Your summation's a bummer, right?" She goes, "A silly little ghost story. You should have stuck to the clown act. It suits your talent, and your vilification of Satan is rice pudding, soggy oatmeal, stale goods, Alan, like all your creative efforts. You're a clerk, Alan, a bookkeeper. You better accept that, and you know why? Because it takes an artist to deal with the devil, not an insurance man with delusions of grandeur. Get out of the grave. Let an artist show you how to call a curse down on Satan."
Dude,
Alan,
I mean, so
fucking awesome, dude.
Yeah, she fucking, Val just owns Alan. Most, like 90% of the time, she fucking owns him. And then this is when I was like, so if she's a paid employee, why would Alan put up with her? You know what I mean? Like, that was just, and I was wondering, I was like, maybe it's like her and Alan's troupe, sort of, like she's almost like the second in command. I don't, you know.
I get that she's been with Alan since day one.
Yeah.
And she's supposed to be the seasoned actor of the seasoned actor of the group. That's what I get.
Yeah.
Like she's the old pro.
But I mean,
who's been with Alan and seen his shtick and it's going nowhere. But she's a desperate actor, so she's gonna do what she needs to do.
And she needs the paycheck, and I'm sure she's good enough for Alan to want to keep around and everything, you know. But
right.
But you're gonna, I know you're gonna walk us through it, but she's about to crush it with hers.
She does. I mean, do you want me to read the whole thing, or
of course, if you want to, if you got it,
okay.
Read it, baby. If you got it, you
All
got to
right, so
you got to do the weird accents and stuff that she does at the end.
I will. So she hops in the grave, and she puts her veil over her head, and very dramatically, she goes, "Hail, Satanic Majesty! Hail, mighty Master of Evil! Tormentor of lost souls, paragon of perfidy, Antichrist, vilest of the vile, Panderer supreme, hail! That's when you hear the thunder rumble. Suddenly, we're getting somewhere, and Val says, "So what's with this little thing we're asking, huh?" Suddenly, she goes into like this gypsy kind of voice.
Yeah, and that's why I wrote down, I was like, is Val a gypsy? Like I didn't quite understand what this was, but okay.
I think she's kind of doing the gypsy chant thing.
Yeah.
And she goes, "A few rotting corpses is to serve our meager needs. So what's the trouble, huh? You got the blood you were asking for, right? You got Orville. You got the warlock and its war chest, right? Is that a bargain, I ask?" Suddenly she says, "Satan, you tweaker of puppy dog tails, you bileless bag of bombast, you paltry purveyor of potence, you half-witted helicon of horse manure, mighty master of evil. Ha! Your most terrifying trick is growing warts on old ladies' noses, scaring scarecrows, snitching buttons, ingrown toenails, corns, and chicken pox." She snaps her fingers. Val looks at Alan and says, "That's your speed." Everyone just giggles except for Anya, who looks terrified.
Yeah.
They all applaud and say how great she is. Actors. They're all feeling good because Alan's been shut down, and suddenly Jeff looks at Alan and then looks down because Alan looks pissed. Alan looks at Val and he says, "Bravo, not bad." Val says, it's a tie game, and she giggles. And Alan says, "Not quite. I've got another ace in the hole, or an ace out of the hole, I should say." He stands up and walks over to Orville, puts his arm around Orville, who's draped over the cross still. And he says, "It's party time. It's the shank of the evening. My friend Orville and I are having cocktails in 10 minutes at my island cottage. Strictly informal." Val says, "Wait a minute. You can't do that." And Alan says, "Oh, but I can. It's Orville's coming out party. And he's been away for a long time. Orville's in the underground, you know. I'm sure he has many interesting things to tell us." Terry asks if Alan's really going to take Orville back to the cottage, and Alan says, "But it's his party. It would be rude not to invite him." Terry says, "We should show some respect for the dead." Alan says, "Why? The dead are losers. If anybody has to earn respect, it's the dead." Terry says, "A man has a right to dignity even when he's dead."
And I love how fucking Alan goes, "Man is a machine that manufactures manure." I was like,
exactly.
Fuck yeah. Yeah, dude.
I mean,
not wrong.
Yep. Anya looks mesmerized and she says, "Well, put him back." And she says, "We're not going to embarrass him, are we, Alan?" And Alan says, "Oh, not at all." Alan says, "More than likely, Orville will shame us all." Foreshadow.
There's a lot of dialogue that foreshadows in this movie.
Alan instructs Jeff and Paul to carry Orville back Roman style, which is basically over their shoulders.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Alan tells Roy and Emerson to get back to the digging. Oh, and to bring the caretaker back too. And so Roy and Emerson stay behind to fill in the holes, and the rest of the gang go back to the cottage.
Yeah, with Orville. Hey everybody, Corey here. I just wanted to let you know that we'll be right back after these short messages.
I'm John, and I'm the host of Action. Every week, I'm joined by James.
Heyo.
And Dustin.
Hello.
And each week, we review, debate, and rank a different action movie.
We're creating the ultimate list of action movies.
From awful to awesome.
So if you want to hear 3 more white guys with beards talk about action movies.
And argue about where they belong on our list.
And decide you hate us because we made fun of your favorite movie.
Join us every Tuesday, and you can find us on your favorite podcatcher.
And Steven Seagal is a joke.
Hello everybody, I'm Adam.
I'm John.
And every week we are giving you a blast from our past.
We are the podcast that brings you full-on movie breakdowns, TV show reviews, album reviews, top 10s, and more, all from the things of our nostalgic past.
So please join us every single week on the Blast from Our Past podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts. However you listen to podcasts, you can find us, and we would love to have you take a trip with us to the land of nostalgia.
And now, back to the show.
Alan leads the group back to the cottage while Paul and Jeff have Orville over their shoulders, carrying him like a big giant piece of wood.
But it's funny because when they get into the cottage, Alan is kind of carrying Orville forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of because it switches it up. But I do like how Alan, kind of brings him in and then just drops Orville straight on his face. And the guy who plays, Orville, obviously, he falls out of, frame, but he maintains character as he's falling out of frame,
Right. And this is important to note, too. Throughout this next kind of sequence, you'll be cutting back to Roy and Emerson filling up grave holes and certain things happening.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention, and this is very important. It's very important. As they were leaving the graveyard with Orville, the camera panned down to the body that Paul fell into. And you see the hands that are draped over the body start to move.
Yep. And there's another time where you see like one of the gravestones has a little, like an ornament on it, and it kind of shakes a little. So yeah,
that's coming up.
Things are stirring.
Yeah. So now remember, Roy and Emerson are back at the graveyard, filling in the grave holes, and you see, the statue on top of one of the graves rattling back and forth. Cut back to Alan dropping Orville in as they come in.
Like straight down, face down.
Yeah. And Jeff says, it's customary to carry the corpse over the threshold, Alan. And Alan just giggles and says, right.
Jeff
and
is
Val
the
says,
comic relief of the movie, technically.
He sure is. And Val says, looks like the honeymoon is over. And Alan says, you're wrong. We're not even married yet. Alan goes over and finds a piece of curtain and tells Jeff to stand up Orville. He goes, stand him, her, it. Stand it up, Jeff. And Jeff and Paul pick up Orville, and Alan drapes the curtain over Orville's head to look like a bride. Anya has flowers, and she goes, it's a bouquet. Alan says, this is the bride-to-be. And he gives Jeff his book, like his incantation book.
His grimoire.
His grimoire. Grimoire. And so he wants to get married to Orville. And Alan says to Paul, you can be the best man, or should I say the best corpse? Foreshadow.
Yeah.
Val says 10-1, it's a shotgun wedding. Womp womp. Alan starts planning. Out of nowhere, Alan wants to just do like a flash wedding, and Jeff gets his moment to shine as the priest.
Yeah, actually, I mean, everything Jeff says I think is fucking hilarious right here. I'm a Jeff fan this entire movie.
It is funny, you're right.
But he's definitely doing like a Jim Belushi or something. He's doing something, you know what I mean? He's doing some kind of comedy thing.
Yeah, and it's all shticky.
Yeah.
At the end, he basically says, he tells Alan to repeat after him, I, Alan, take this body. And then Jeff goes, you deserve everything you get. And everyone starts laughing. Jeff continues his marriage speech and now he goes, I now pronounce you man and whatever the hell he is. Cut back to Roy and Emerson filling up the graves. The camera pans across the graveyard to one of the graves. Camera closes in on the dirt of one of the graves, and you see the dirt start to kind of move and fall in.
Yep.
It's so creepy. To me, I'm just like, it's subtle. There's no music. It's grainy looking. This is everything I love about atmospheric horror films.
I'm with you there 100%.
Cut back to the cottage. Alan instructs Paul to get the party going. Jeff and Alan are laying next to Orville on the couch. Orville is between them. Paul doesn't want to be the entertainment for the night and looks bummed out. Alan starts making all these corpse jokes, is like, keep a stiff upper lip. Anya and Terry don't look amused either. Alan continues to make a bunch of jokes about Orville for a really long time. Like, he keeps going on and on about all these different stupid jokes. And Paul is looking more and more unhappy. Alan gets up and walks over to Paul and says, all right, pretty boy, do it. Paul says, I can't think of anything funny to say. Terry says, that's because it's not funny. It's disgusting. Alan looks pissed and he walks over to Terry, gets right in her face and says, disgusting? Do I disgust you, Miss Seducible Brownie? And he pinches her. And he says, but why? This is just good, clean fun. Check it out in your Girl Scout manual under things to do in the cemetery.
Yeah.
Nice callback.
I was going to say, great callback to earlier.
I love this. Paul says, wait a minute. And Alan says, sit down, meat. You know, I don't think that Orville likes being called disgusting. I know that I don't like being called disgusting. Perhaps you shouldn't be working for someone so disgusting. I fucking love this scene that's about to come up. He snarls at her and he goes, maybe I could just release you from your contract under the disgusting clause. And also from my disgusting clause. And he touches her hand.
And that's where I noted earlier that I like how the dialogue is smart. And, like I said, the different versions of clause, yada, yada, yada.
Yep.
This is the line. I think it's awesome. I love that. I think it's really fucking cool.
And what is about to happen, again, I think is
sadistic
totally
as
realistic. And it's sadistic, but it's probably pretty realistic.
For sadistic fucking controlling directors, yeah.
Yep. Or Harvey Weinstein, right?
Mm-hmm.
Alan walks back to the couch and sits down next to Orville and says, well, guess we'll have to dig up a new ingenue. Cut back to Terry saying, no, I didn't mean to start anything. I'm sorry.
Well, then why did you start something? I like that dialogue, too, because it was very real world, when Alan's like, well, then why did you start something?
Right. Alan asks if Orville will forgive Terry. Alan acts like he's talking to Orville. He looks back at Terry and says, he will hear you.
And he will see your braless chest.
Right. Terry starts walking over to Orville while Anya looks totally freaked out. And Terry says, I want to apologize, Orville. Cut to Anya looking out the window of the cottage into the darkness of the forest while Terry continues to apologize to Orville. And it's a very dramatic, it's a very like, oh, this is so fucked up, because he's basically making her act to a dead body.
Yeah.
Like, apologize, right?
I think this is when Alan crosses a line, personally. Yeah. I think like his character
this
is now...
This is when?
At this point now, I think his character is kind of irredeemable, type of thing, because it's kind of a dick move,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So while this is going on, Anya's looking outside. Suddenly, Alan asks if Anya would care to join. And she finally slowly comes back to the group and saying, we shouldn't treat him like this. We shouldn't hurt or make fun of him. He won't like us if we do. He'll be angry. We should respect his beauty. There's great beauty in death. Cut to Alan looking at Anya disgusted, and he says, no, Anya, that won't do. That won't do at all. Alan continues to make Terry apologize to Orville. Cut back to Anya looking out the cottage window. Now you can hear thunder overhead. Cut back to Roy and Emerson filling in holes. Camera slowly pans through the cemetery, cutting back to Anya looking out the window. out the window.
I'm keeping that one.
I'm losing it, guys. I'm losing it. Alan is messing with Terry. Finally, Anya just yells, stop it! Stop it!
Stop it!
Alan looks pissed and says, what did you say? Anya approaches and says, if we respect him, he'll respect us. He's trying to tell us. You can see it in his eyes. You can see it in his face. She looks maniacal and she's like terrified.
And she's doing a lot of eyebrow acting, like I said.
But there's also a lot of truth to what she's saying, too.
Oh, yeah. No. Don't get me wrong. Again, like I said, I think she might be my favorite character. She's I enjoy everything she's doing, and I'm vibing with what she's saying.
What Alan's about to do, this to me like continues to cross the line.
Yeah, no, I mean Alan's the fucking worst, man.
Yeah, he goes, "This is clay. This is clay," and he starts touching Orville's face. He goes, "It's like primitive hot clay pieces stuck together with splits of bone." He leans over to Orville and says, "That's all you are, Orville, old buddy. Clay, mud." Anya tells him to stop. And starts getting super upset, and she starts screaming, and Alan says, "I'll do what I want with him. He's mine. I'm going to take you home with me, Orville, and I'm going to prop you up in my living room. And when your friends come to call, I'm going to say, here's my good friend Orville. Anya's continuing to yell at him to stop it, stop it. Alan says, and when you finally fall apart, I'm going to take your scraps and feed them to my dog. How about that, Anya? Am I showing enough respect for the dead? And when he's nothing but bones, I'm going to take him all apart and use them for bookends. He stands up and rushes towards Anya, taunting her and says, or maybe a soup ladle or a mobile. Anything that comes to mind. And Anya's just like having a meltdown.
He's such a dick. He's being such a fucking dick, man.
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna get a big kick out of it. I'll tell you what, I'll take all the bones and I'll paint them and I'll use them for Christmas decorations and I'll start singing, deck the halls with bones of ivory, fa la 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 la. And then he swipes at Anya's face like he takes his blue robe that he's still wearing and he swipes her in the face. Like, if he would have smacked her if he had his hand fully out.
Yeah, that was like, yeah, I was like, oh, fuck this guy, you know?
Yeah. At that point, Anya's like full meltdown, terrified, crying. She's being comforted. And he goes, I'm going to take Orville upstairs to bed. Anya goes to Orville and says, we'll make up for this. He doesn't understand, but I do now. Oh, God. And she starts freaking out. She's like, please forgive us. And the thunder starts rumbling. She's crying. She asks Orville if they'll forgive them. And she's screaming, no, please, please. Paul and Terry grab her to comfort her while she's screaming to calm her down. Paul says, we got to get her out of here. And he yells at Alan. He's like, get that thing out of here. And Anya says, don't touch it, it's evil. And then she looks at Alan and she goes, you're evil.
Yeah.
Alan's face looks pissed and he just walks off. He goes to grab Orville. Jeff helps him. Alan and Jeff bring Orville upstairs to the bedroom where he said the original caretaker was hung. Or hanged. And they lay him on this bed, this mattress, and the thunder continues to rumble.
The thunder rolls.
Jeff looks at Alan and says, you've gone too far this time. And Alan says, I don't give a damn what you think. Get out. Alan gets on the mattress next to Orville, like laying next to him. Laying next to Orville, looking at him. Cut to Val and Jeff. Jeff walks up to Val and says, is she better? And Val says, I wouldn't say she's in the best of health. Jeff asks Anya if she's feeling better, and Anya looks totally freaked out.
Yeah, she's like, I think at this point she's kind of like in shock because she's like not even like, she's not comatose, but she's not responsive either.
Right. Paul and Jeff huddle up and say, we better get out of here. And then Val's like, yeah, we need to get out now. It's not fucking time to go.
Yeah. Exit stage left even.
Oh, heavens to Murgatroyd. Cut to Alan in bed with Orville, looking at him lovingly, and he whispers into Orville's ear, and he says, you're a great teacher, Orville, and a wonderful friend. And I think in time, we may get even closer.
I mean, Alan at this point, I mean, he's fucking lost it, man. He's completely gone, you know?
Looney Tunes.
Looney Tunes even.
Cut back to Roy and Emerson. What the fuck are those guys doing? They're filling up graves. Roy looks like he's about to stop, and Emerson says, we still need to bury Mr. Hyde over there. Roy doesn't want to. He goes, I'm just asking you to bury it. They walk over to the corpse that had the no lips that started moving earlier.
Yeah.
With the ring on its finger. They get down on their knees close to the body. Roy's like, what are we going to do with it? Emerson says, just cover it with some dirt. But then Roy notices the ring on his hand. He goes, oh, look at this. And he's disgusted by the smell. And he goes, oh, they buried him without his right guard. But then he goes to take the ring off, and suddenly the eyes to the body open, and the corpse roars to life. The music intensifies. He grabs Roy by the neck, and the music spikes.
And this is when music starts going crazy.
This is when it gets really crazy. Emerson freaks out and starts running away. As he runs away, suddenly another corpse out of nowhere appears and grabs Emerson. Bodies start rising out of the ground super fast. Like we went from 0 to 60 in about 3 seconds.
Yeah, no, so this is, again, like we said, an hour and 26 minutes is this movie, 27 minutes, somewhere around there. This is literally at the exact hour mark. This is when this starts happening. And at this point, from now until the end, we're going to be sprinting. And it's just going to be fucking chaos between now and then.
Yep. Yeah, so now zombies are popping out of the ground left and right. The music is, I wrote, totally Texas Chainsaw Massacre type stuff. You know, when
like experimental, like it's a guitar, but the guy's running a drill across it or something, like trying to make all these weird sounds. And you know what? I'm not a big fan of that kind of shit, but it works here. And I love it, man. It creates this fucking atmosphere of eeriness and weirdness, and you just know that everything in the world is wrong right now, and that's because of the weird ass music that the composer does.
And I'm realizing too, this is before Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
And this music is very similar.
Yeah.
Again, I think Tobe Hooper perhaps heard these music cues and was influenced.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know if it's that or if it's the zeitgeist of the time or whatnot, but I say there's a lot of similarities between this and Texas Chainsaw Massacre that you wouldn't notice on first blush, but you watch it and you start piecing things together and you're like, I can see where this led to that type of thing.
Totally. And now we're in full serious mode.
Oh yeah. Tonally, the movie kind of shifts, but yet stays. It keeps one foot in the tone that the hour came previously. It keeps one foot there, but now it sticks another foot into just straight horror. There's nothing funny about the zombies in this movie, and that no. I think ultimately is what works. Is that the humor and stuff and what is funny here and the characters and things we like. That's great and all, but none of that is applicable to the zombies. Once they rise up, they are doing their own thing, and there's no humor to it whatsoever.
So now Roy's being attacked by one zombie. Emerson's being attacked by another zombie. You remember the caretaker? Remember him? Remember that guy? He's still down by a tree.
Poor fucking bastard.
Poor guy. He's freaked out. He's freaking out. You see all these different zombies rising out of the grave. They all look from all different walks of life. One of them looks like a soldier.
Female bride. Awesome guy with the mutton chops. He's my favorite. But yeah, I like that you can instantly tell one zombie from another.
So cool. They're all distinctly different, and they all look really fucking cool.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the caretaker tries to get up and get away from the tree, but he gets attacked by zombies immediately. It's too late. They grab him, start ripping him apart. Cut back to Emerson on the ground, and he's dead too.
I love how Emerson's kind of contorted. Half of his body is in the grave and the other half is not. And yet, all the humor's gone at this point, but at the same time, the zombies aren't as slow as, Night of the Living Dead, Romero zombies, but they're not as fast as the Zack Snyder Dawn of the Dead remake zombies. They're kind of in between,
Actually, this is my favorite pace of zombies.
Yeah.
They've got enough animation in them to move pretty briskly.
Yeah.
But not too fast.
That's brisk, baby.
Cut back to the cottage. Oh yeah, there's stuff going on in the cottage. Val goes to the bedroom to check on Alan upstairs. Alan's still messing with her. Alan rises Orville up and says, "Alan's not here. May I help you?"
Yeah.
Pretending to be Orville.
Like a piece of shit.
Yep. And he goes, "I've only just begun." Val says, "We're leaving." And Alan says, "Oh, that's interesting. How are you going?" Val says, "We're taking the boat, Alan." And then Alan says, "Huh? Claiming victory? Mm-hmm." And he threatens Val with losing her job. And Val says, "It won't work, Alan. Not this time. You lose." And she storms off, and Alan looks at Orville and says, "Orville still loves me." Cut to the gang minus Alan starting to exit the cottage. They ask if Alan's coming, and Val says, "I didn't ask him." As they're walking out of the cottage, they stop to look out into the darkness of the forest, and they hear a sound. Jeff asks what that sound is. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Roy bursts out of the forest, coming towards them, covered in blood. They ask him what happened. He says, "They're coming! They're coming!" And he runs into the cottage. Suddenly, the camera turns, pans back to the forest, and you see 20, 30 zombies coming towards them. They start freaking out.
And this kind of reminds me of, again, this takes place later, so maybe he ripped it off, but George Romero's Day of the Dead, which is my favorite Romero zombie movie. And I love at the beginning when, at the very beginning scene, when they take the helicopter, they land, and he's like yelling, "Anyone there?" And you just hear the she's like, "Hold on, do you hear that?" And you just hear the moans coming off in the distance. It kind of reminded me of that. Like, there's like a beat, and then they're outside, they don't see anything, but they're like, what is that? I can hear something, like something's coming, type of thing. It kind of reminded me of that, which means maybe George Romero, Day of the Dead, kind of aped this a little bit. Who knows? But I like that. I like the scene. I like that momentary beat before the zombies emerge, because they know something's fucking coming.
Totally. Yeah, this horde comes towards them and starts overtaking them. They're pushing the zombies back. Alan appears at the doorway, sees the horde, goes back into the cottage. All of the actors go back in the cottage and close the door. The zombies are banging on the door. The door has an old school, one of those like wooden kind of crank locks, like it's a piece of wood that slips in between a couple other pieces of wood.
Yeah. Like
a latch, basically, like a turning latch. Anyways, Terry's freaking out. Paul and Jeff cover the door with a board. They find a hammer and nails, cut the zombies outside banging on the door. They do a good job, again, with a very minimal budget. They're nailing in the boards on the wall, on the door. It looks realistic enough to me.
Yeah.
I don't have any problem with this.
Yeah, and this doesn't take like 20 minutes, like, Night of the Living Dead remake or something. Like, this is like, first off, we only have like 20 minutes, maybe even 17 minutes left in the movie. This goes by so fast.
Exactly. It really does. The group's huddled inside. They're trying to be quiet. Terry says, "God, I swear to God, it's from the graveyard, that thing." And Jeff says, "That's ridiculous." Terry says, "It is. I swear it is." They all start freaking out, and Val calmly says, "Wait a minute. Alan, is this a joke?" Camera pans over to Alan, who looks down at Roy, who's on the couch, bloodied. I don't know if he's dead yet, but he's close to being dead.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, what was the kitchen but is now the back entrance.
Yeah, I didn't even fucking put that together the first time. You're right.
The doors that are covered in drapes burst open, and the zombies are there banging on it. And Paul and Jeff and Alan run up to push the zombies back. Val runs up too to hold the zombies off, while Jeff and Alan grab a door, like an extra door in the like a closet door, and off its hinges, bring it over to cover up the rear entrance and hammer that in to barricade themselves in. Everyone's freaking out. Finally, the pounding from all the zombies just stops. It's super quiet, and the camera pans through the cottage.
And I like that. I like the zombies like, well, we can't get in, so we're going to conserve our energy,
Yeah, I love this. Paul looks out the window and sees that the zombies are just standing there, and even says that. He's like, they're just standing there. They check all the entrances and see that there's zombies all around the cottage.
My favorite shot is when Val takes the flashlight and looks through the back door and kind of pans the flashlight around, and you see those, like 3 zombies standing there, kind of like snarling or whatever. It's great because it's all realistically shot. So it's not like a big budget movie where, they have giant tungsten lights out in the woods lighting it up. You guys know those shots in movies at night in the woods. There's no lights there. Like, you know what I mean? But like, I love this. This is just literally the camera and, the flashlight, and the flashlight is the light, that the camera's using.
Yeah, it's realistic.
Exactly.
Because it's real.
And so a lot of times with these low budget films, it might not look as good, but it's more realistic. And that's what I fucking like. And again, I'm going to say it again.
Any day.
I love the fact that this fucking movie was not shot day for night. I love it. I love that you can only see so much, because Again, that's realistic.
I love it. I'll take it anytime. They look at Roy. He, again, looks like he's about to die or he is already dead. Terry's crying. Jeff says they must have gotten Emerson too. Alan says, what are we going to do? Suddenly, Alan's with the group, right? Paul runs upstairs when he hears a sound and sees an entrance, sees one of the, like a window to one of the bedrooms, and a zombie's trying to get in. He just pushes the zombie out of the window, falls off the ledge, and they close the door to that bedroom and lock it.
And it was my mutton chop zombie.
It was your mutton chops, and he's, on the dead. He's on the ground, smushed. And they check all the other bedrooms. They're okay.
And I like the fact that we don't spend, again, this is sort of the opposite of Night of the Living Dead and Night of the Living Dead remake. We don't spend that much time fortifying the house and getting it ready. It's almost the opposite of that. They fortify it a little bit, but it kind of goes to shit pretty quickly.
Yeah, because Val says they can't get upstairs. It's too high, even though there was a zombie up there already. So, whatever. Jeff asks, what are they going to do? Val says, I think it's obvious. Somebody's got to get to the boat and bring help. We're trapped in here, but it won't be long before they get in. And Jeff asks about the gun. Paul says, well, we left it back at the graveyard in the trunk.
God damn it. It's got bastards.
God damn it. Jeff says, well, they seem pretty slow. Why don't we try and run for it? Val says there's too many of them. I mean, nowadays, this shit's cliche. Yeah. Guys, 1972. Possibly only the
second or third. Who the fuck knows?
After Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, but yeah, not a lot of other fucking zombie movies have come since then. And this movie, it's building off what it's already learned from Night of the Living Dead, and then it's kind of making its own thing. This is the groundwork for the movies that we see today.
Totally. They're kind of discussing what the plan should be. Val says, we don't know how many more of them are outside. Paul says, look, if you can get out front, I can slip out the back. Terry's pleading with him not to. And Val says, it's probably the only way.
Terry's like, don't. Look at these perky titties. Don't do it.
Don't leave me, baby.
Baby.
And Paul says, you're going to have to go out the front and fight them off and distract them basically while I go out the back and run away.
Wrong.
Val says, it'll work. And they cut to Alan looking worried.
And I like how at this point, there's no more jokes. Like Alan and Val aren't really like going back and forth. Like that's all done. That's all in the past because shit has gotten real.
Right? Val says, we'll distract them as best as we can. They clear the door ready to open. They clear the front door ready to open it. They all have weapons in their hands. Even Alan has got a weapon in his hand. He's got like a hammer or something.
You know what Terry fucking has? A flashlight. And she's
got a flashlight,
fucking nothing.
So she can shine it in their face, blind them. She's blinding the zombies.
Blinded by the light.
Val asks if they're ready. Val, Jeff, Alan, and Terry run out front with weapons in their hands, pushing away the zombies. Terry just stands there with her fucking light looking terrified. I mean, it's understandable.
Just shining it on different zombies as she's screaming while everyone else is fucking working.
I mean, it's understandable too. Sure. I would probably, I wouldn't be terrified, but I know some people that would be. Suddenly one zombie approaches Val and Val stabs it with a knife. It's kind of a cool shot. Paul opens up the back door, runs off. Gang runs back inside and closes the door after Paul takes off. Zombies are pounding on the front door. Suddenly they hear a big scream and crying from the back entrance. Terry looks terrified. Jeff and Val run to the back. They look out into the darkness and they hear a weird growling, snarling sound. They use the flashlight into the darkness to check to see what they can see. And they see the camera pans over to Paul being devoured by a female zombie on his back.
He did not make it far. I fucking dude.
10 feet.
Dude. I love that, man. I love the fact that, like, you think he's going to be the hero. I'm going to save the day, and he doesn't. And that feels like a modern concept. It feels like something that we would see today, where it's like, we build this character up to be the hero. We saw it in a movie. The only one that's coming to my head is Feast. Was a great example of this, where they kind of at the beginning of the movie built up this guy as the hero and in a sort of in a funny way, and then he fucking dies like horribly. And it's like, okay, it kind of spins your expectations. But I feel like that this is sort of a modern thing, and they're doing it back in 1972. Like,
yeah,
he made it like fucking 10 yards. Like, that's it. Like, he didn't
That's
fucking
it.
make it, you know?
That's it. And his girlfriend, Terry, is freaking out. And right after that, a zombie comes out of nowhere, grabs her, pulls her into the darkness, and she's dead.
Into the darkness as she's
It's
screaming.
really creepy.
Yeah, that was cool. But I do think that was a bit of an homage to Barbara in the original Night of the Living Dead, sort of, you know, getting pulled out. But like, yeah, dude, like I liked it because she was like, she sees Paul, and then she's still in the doorway, but so she turns around to kind of like look away, but there's still zombies there, so they just fucking grab her and take her out screaming. And then, you know, again, it's the same thing where I expected Paul and Terry to be the survivors of this movie, and they're the first, not the first to go. Roy and Emerson are the first to go, but the first of the main characters.
The main characters. Yeah. They're that's kind of the most shocking thing where you're like, oh my God, they just took those two out?
Yeah.
Because Jeff tries to grab her, but it's too late. She's already been pulled into the darkness.
Yeah, and at this point, I'm on the edge of my seat on my first viewing because I don't know what the fuck's coming next.
Awesome. They close the door to barricade themselves back in. Cut to Alan sitting with Anya while she's freaking out, and Alan's saying, "This can't happen." And Val says, "It is happening. Don't just sit there whining, sickening pervert. It is happening. You did it. You did it. You got to get us out of this." Jeff calms her down and says, "Listen to me. There's got to be a way out. Maybe Alan can get us out of here." He points at the book. There's got to be something in this book to send them back. I call it the Necronomicon.
You're not wrong, you know.
Right. And Jeff goes, "There's got to be a counterspell." And Alan holds the book up and says, counterspell. He brings the book over to the fireplace and he says, recitation for the dead. He's looking through the pages and he goes, "Return the blood to the fire." He continues to shuffle through the pages and he holds up a page of the book that is like folded up and he throws it into the fireplace. Cut back to Val looking out the window. She sees the zombies moving away from the cottage and she goes, "There's something happening. Keep it up. Keep doing what you're doing." And Alan says, "Return the ceremonial corpse to the grave." And he goes, God, we can't do that."
Right. And I like how Val's like, "Just keep reading. Like it may still work, you know."
Yeah, she goes, "Just read the words as they're written." Alan continues. He goes, "In the prescribed manner of these things, Prince of Darkness, brethren of hell, master of the fiery pit, hear the prayers of thy servants. We who have transgressed against thy might be, and grant us pardon, grant us leave, release us from the vengeance, accept our vow that we shall never more transgress against thy awful might, and ye of the grave, whose rest we have defiled, sleepers in the eternal night, obey the will of Lucifer, of Demigorgon, of all the lords of hell. If they should hear us our plea, and grant us pardon, grant us leave, seek not our deaths, seek not our souls, obey the will of Lucifer, obey the wheel of hell, return and sleep, and walk no more."
I just wanted to fucking be like Rosemary's Babies. "Hail Satan! Hail Satan!
Hail Satan!" So suddenly, this seems to have worked. The incantation worked. The zombies appear to be walking away. Jeff, who's now excited, says they're gone. Alan says, "Wait, listen." Cut to the exteriors of the cottage, and all you hear are crickets, and you see empty shots of where the zombies used to be.
Is this where you see a cool shot of fucking Paul and Terry?
You see Paul and Terry's dead bodies on the ground covered in blood.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's so good, man. It's so fucking good. Terry's just like, it's like a close-up shot, and she's just like looking upwards, but she's just covered in blood, so you just know she's ripped apart. And I love movies that I don't need to see her being ripped apart. I don't need to see that. My brain will fucking fill it in, you know? It's the Jaws scenario. It's what you don't see. I'll fill it in, and it'll always be worse than what the film, you know, the director can show me, you know? I love that shit.
I mean, Romero took it to the next awesome degree with Dawn and Night, or with Dawn and Day, and got super gory. But this totally works for me. I'll take it anytime. I'll take it anytime.
Me too.
Val says, "All right, we got to try." She's like very determined now. And she goes, "Don't take anything but a weapon. Val and Jeff look at Roy's dead body on the couch. Alan
they look at Roy's dead body. They're like, late.
Yeah, Alan looks at Val and says, we can't help him.
And it's interesting because the zombies, they don't bite you and like bring you back. You know what I mean?
No.
It's not like it's an
You're
infection
dead.
type of thing.
I kind of like that, actually.
Yeah, me too, because I think these zombies are demonic because they used a demon spell to bring them up, you know?
Like Evil Dead?
Yep. This is more Evil Dead than Night of the Living Dead.
Well, maybe our boy Sammy Raimi.
His whole
watched
Sammy.
this too. Jeff, followed by Val, followed by Alan holding on to Anya, walk out of the cottage. You see a cool overhead camera shot of them walking out. You hear birds hooting, crickets chirping. They look around cautiously as they don't see anything. They're getting closer to the boat and further away from the cottage. Suddenly, out of nowhere, zombies roar to life, attacking Jeff and Val as they fight them off, but it's too late. Jeff and Val get overtaken and start getting eaten by the zombies.
Yeah, I like the one. Well, yeah, Jeff gets like 5-6 zombies just tackle him. He's like, screaming as he's getting tackled. I like Val because one takes her left arm, one takes her right arm. So she's kind of like, in a sort of cross pose. And then that bride zombie that you've kind of seen just goes right for her fucking face. And it's not gory, but I can fill in the blanks that she fucking ate her fucking face off.
Yeah, you know that's what happened.
Yep.
Right?
She went right for her nose first.
At this point now, it's just down to Alan and Anya.
And Anya's next to catatonic at this point.
Yeah. So the two of them run back into the cottage, kind of backing up into the cottage, closing the door to the cottage. As soon as they close the door to the cottage, the door bursts open. The zombies are like, fuck this. You ain't doing shit. And they're backing away from the zombies, making their way slowly up the stairs to the second floor. This is my favorite moment in the movie.
Yes.
Hands down.
Mine too.
Alan makes his way. Alan's holding on to Anya. Anya's in front of him. He's kind of holding her like a shield, but you kind of get the sense that maybe he's just holding her to protect her as they're making their way up the stairs. Suddenly, the zombies are getting closer. He takes Anya and he pushes her at the zombies, and the zombies catch Anya, but instead of attacking her, all of them freeze, including Anya, who's now turned looking at Alan in shock as to what Alan just did.
Yeah, because like they're kind of like bringing her down into their pile, but they're not like actively like, eating her or attacking her at the moment, but they're all like looking at Alan and he's looking in horror and Anya's just looking back. Like, she's going to get ripped apart, but there's that beat, that moment where Alan and Anya's eyes are locked, and even the zombies are looking at Alan.
Yeah, all the zombies too.
Even the zombies are almost looking at him like, you asshole. You know what I mean?
They did.
Which
is what's so great about it. It totally breaks character, but it totally makes sense because it's a moment that maybe up until this point we haven't seen in a horror film where you're like, wow, the sole survivor at this point is the biggest piece of shit of them all.
And that is so the opposite of a lot of horror movies and everything. This is one of those movies where everyone's going to die, but you don't
This ain't going to have a happy ending for humans.
No happy ending, but you do not expect the last person to be alive is the biggest piece of shit. That's just not how these things work. And that's what I like about this movie.
Who, by the way, looks like Ryder Strong from Boy Meets World,
Okay.
But then he was in Cabin Fever.
Yep, no, I can see that. But I mean, if Ryder Strong had a mustache and a goatee, I can see it.
I think he did in Cabin Fever. I
saw that in the theater. I like that movie.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. Anyways, so now Alan, the biggest piece of shit, runs up the stairs into the bedroom where Orville was, closes the door. Another beautiful shot. He turns to look where Orville is, where Orville was laying down, and Orville is what?
And Orville is sitting now on the bed. So like you said, he was laying before that, obviously like a corpse. Now he's sitting there. And I love that. I love that he's not standing, ready to attack. He was just sitting there, which, because I think what's freaky about it is sitting is such a human thing because you're resting. You know what I mean? Like there's something human about that, which makes it freaky because he's technically a corpse, you know, and obviously he's now at this point, he's reanimated. We know that, but just having him sitting there versus having him lying there and sitting up is different. It's the perfect choice to create like such an eerie visual, because he's kind of like, you know, his arms are kind of in between his legs dangling as he's sitting there, you know, and then he looks up. It's great. And then fucking Alan throws a fucking hammer at him, like misses him by a mile.
Well, so Orville approaches, but you don't see Orville approach. You just see his shadow, a la Nosferatu or Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
Yep. It's like
a really
very
cool
German,
shot.
very German expressionism.
Yeah, you see Orville's hands, his shadow of his hands approaching Alan. Alan throws his hammer like a little bitch, doesn't do anything to him, does nothing.
It doesn't even hit him.
Nope. Orville slowly moves in and then attacks Alan, grabbing him, hugging Alan, and pulling him to the ground.
As Alan screams like a fucking bitch.
He screams like you would expect him to scream, which is great. The door suddenly is burst open by the rest of the zombies, and they trample on top and dogpile Alan, most likely ripping him to shreds, and I'm sure he felt every moment of it.
And I love that it's so cool. The camera work is awesome because
it goes slow-mo too.
Yeah, it's slow-mo, and like these you know, these bodies are like piling on, and I'm sure the actor's not underneath, you know, but you get the sense that it is. But I love that it ends on that one last female kind of like looking at the camera.
Oh, it's so
with their
creepy.
Deranged eyes and everything. Like zombies that kind of, there's so many different versions of zombies, and I like the Fulci zombie version where they're kind of walking around with their eyes closed and they're super slow. And I like the fast running Zack Snyder version, but this version is kind of like they're maniacs. Like they're kind of maniacal, and maybe it's because he used Satan to bring them back. And so maybe they're demons or something, like you said, Evil Dead aspect of it. But I like that. I like that this scene ends with that one wild-eyed female zombie like staring at the camera as she's like crawling on top of the pile of people, you know.
Me too. It's terrifying. And from there the scene fades out.
And from there Lucio Fulci ripped off at this point in those
totally,
last
which
1
is
minute.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
So from here you cut back to the skyline of Miami from earlier in the beginning of the movie, and the quote, children, I wrote, like the zombie children, arrive on the dock, shuffling towards the boat. They pile onto the boat one by one, and then you realize that the boat is actually getting unhooked from the dock and is starting to drift off towards the mainland. A la, well, any zombie movie, but I'm thinking of zombies in specifically, you know, with that boat arriving.
Yep, a la zombie.
And what's great about this is the credits start to roll as the zombies shuffle onto the boat. When the credits are done rolling, in green, that sick neon green font, it says the end. The boat starts to move away from the dock, and the movie fades to black. And that is Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things.
Dude, this was a movie that took me a little bit of time to sort of get into because it's so different than what we're used to.
So different.
Yeah, and you know, it doesn't play by the same tropes that we're sort of used to by this point. So like the first viewing that I had, I was just like, yeah, I love the last 20 minutes, you know, I thought that was fucking amazing. But like, I was like, I'm just like, I wasn't sure how much I enjoyed the first part of it. But on my second viewing, you know, when I take the notes and really pay attention to it, I'm like, no, this was fun. Like it moves really quickly. And it's, like I said, the dialogue is what really sort of keeps it going. And it's like sort of that fast-paced, quick dialogue that you really enjoy, and everything kind of keeps you on your toes. And it's a really fast film when you sort of sit back and think about it, you know? And I think it's fun. I think this is a fun movie. It's not perfect. There's a lot of gaffes to it. The pacing, could be sort of hit or miss here and there. But for the most part, I think that it does enough different. And even in 2023, it does enough different from other zombie movies to stand out from the crowd. I'm going to say there is no other zombie movie like this one. No one has come close that I've seen to doing something as different as this zombie film. It's truly unique in sort of its setup and sort of how it sort of plays out and its tone. Its tone is sort of comedic, dark comedy for the first 2/3 of it, and then it just goes dark. There's no comedy at the end. The last 27 minutes, there's no comedy. Like even our comic relief characters stop being funny, and I like that. I like that the zombies are evil, almost Evil Dead-ish, but like they're just evil. And I like that. And they seem to have like some kind of mind, like mentality to them. It's different, man. It's such a different fucking movie.
Yeah, I've been wanting to bring it to our show for so long, and it was so great to revisit a movie from my childhood that I had fond memories of way back when that still holds up. That today I look at and go, yeah, no, I happily watch this. I could watch it several more times. Like I said, I watched it 3 times in the past week, and I enjoyed it all 3 times. So I highly recommend to each and every one of you. I'm sure you can find it for free on YouTube, perhaps, or some sort of streaming service.
I'm actually looking right now. I just wanted to throw out there. It looks like you can rent it on Amazon. You can rent it on YouTube. So, I don't think it's actually streaming. Hold on a second. Free. Yeah, it's streaming on Plex. I don't know what Plex is. So, guys and gals, however you can see this, I highly recommend you do. And even if you just pick up the Blu-ray, track it down. If you've never seen this and you're a fan of zombie movies, you have to see it. There's so much. This influenced so much that came after it that you're not well versed in zombie movies if you have not seen Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things.
Yeah, this will automatically boost you into the cool kids group, in my opinion. And so, yes, I am including Corey and I in the cool kids group because we've seen this, we've broken it down, we've treated this film as well as we could have treated it. So
now you said you saw it when you were a kid. Did you rent it or did you see it like on HBO or?
No, it was on Creature Feature Saturday.
So it was just you saw it on Creature. Did they edit anything out of it or was it?
Not that I remember at all.
Okay.
And like I said, the intro to you can find the Thriller intro on YouTube. The Thriller TV 20 intro is on YouTube still, and it has scenes from this with that.
Nice.
It's so freaky, and I for years thought, oh, I must have just been freaked out by that. No, it's the last third of this film is freaky and intense and well worth the ride that takes you there.
Yeah, it's I don't want to say it's not a slow burn because the movie's entertaining, no. 2/3.
It's a time capsule though. It's a time capsule movie like often some of our favorite films are. You can't I don't want them to remake this movie. I want them to just take elements of it and pay homage, but that's about it.
Yeah. I mean, Alan's outfit alone is a time capsule.
Agreed.
Dude. But, I'm glad you've been talking about this movie pretty much the entire time that we've been doing Podcasting After Dark. So I'm glad that we finally have this one under our belt. And I can say it's a good one. Would I watch this over Black Christmas? No, probably not. But will I watch this again? Abso-fucking-lutely. Will I show it to people? Yes. This is one of those movies where you're like, you want to see something different? Let's watch this one, Yep.
Yeah, you want to see something scary? Just wait. Just give it a minute. Give it a minute. Speaking of time capsules, Cartwright is buttoned up on the Seinfeld tip, but you got Curb Your Enthusiasm you're doing over at Cartwright.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, buddy. Yeah, Adam and I are about halfway through Curb Your Enthusiasm on the Cartwright Patreon page. We are releasing once every few weeks. We're doing like a top 5, like, Jerry Seinfeld girlfriends, top 5, Elaine boyfriends and whatnot. So we're having some fun post Seinfeld, but we're pretty much digging into Curb Your Enthusiasm at this point. And it's my first time watching it. It's Adam's second time. He's not as well versed as Seinfeld, but it's my very first time going through it, and it's been an interesting ride to say the least. Zach, were you ever a Curb fan? Did you ever watch Curb Your Enthusiasm?
I've only watched 1 or 2 episodes,
okay.
But I know they're filming a new season right now, so just keep going strong. Good for Larry David.
Yeah, keep growing and showing, just like $2 late fee, buddy. Let's see, we are about halfway through March at this point, so I know we built up martial arts madness and all that kind of stuff. But is there anything you want to plug that we haven't talked about yet already?
Well, we just dropped our 100th episode.
There you go.
Which is cheers to that. We covered Bloodsport. We had a very special guest that was not announced up until this point. Former WWE wrestler, but full-time wrestler and actor Paul London. He's a really awesome dude. He joined us on that episode. It's really entertaining. It definitely covers all the Bloodsport bases. We've got great interviews lined up for the rest of the month. We've got 2 more. We've got one from Cobra Kai, and we've got one who's worked with Jean-Claude Van Damme quite a bit. Patrons know who that is. So if you're signed up to $2 late fees Patreon, you get exclusive access to the upcoming guests as far as asking them questions and stuff like that. We let you know ahead of time what's coming up, but we're stacked for April. We're stacked for May. And by the time of this recording, I think we're all the way recorded into June. So we've got a huge slate moving forward.
And can I give a fucking shout out to all those people that signed up to both Podcasting After Dark and $2 late fee? I mean,
for real. Thank you guys.
There's so many of you all that support both shows. You guys fucking rock. Like, seriously, like, that's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it blows my mind that you guys. It doesn't blow my mind. I think our content speaks for itself. But thank you guys for signing up, guys and gals. Seriously, you keep these podcast trains going for us. You keep the lights on at the $2 late fee video store. You keep the lights on at the X-rated video store for sleazy Podcasting After Dark. I'm kidding.
The
you get the point.
The irony is that Pad's Patreon is probably less sleazy than the free feed.
This is true. And Pad's Patreon is less sleazy than $2 late fees Patreon because
isn't that ironic?
Some of the stories we tell on Tales from the Video Store on $2 late fee are a little woofa, but they're entertaining. So thank you guys. Thank you guys for the continued support. And honestly, podcasting costs money. It's expensive. So if you're able to do it, if you're able to do it, you're able to help us out. Thank you. If you're not, and you're able to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or 5-star on Spotify, that's great too. However you can support us, please do, because
or tell your friends about us. Like, you just spread the word type of thing. That's a free way to do it as well.
Honestly, yeah, I've had some people reach out recently, fans of the show, and I'm like, oh, how did you hear about us? And I said, oh, from my friend. He told me to check you guys out. So thank you guys for the continued support. Thank you for all the artists, all the Instagram people who comment, the 3 Facebook people that comment, because Facebook is terrible.
Yeah, fuck Facebook.
Thank you sincerely to everybody involved in keeping the show what it is, and it'll continue to only get better. I can reassure you that. Corey and I are sitting on stacks of movies right now.
We ain't going nowhere.
Only gonna get better. So yeah, cheers to all y'all. Thank you again for everything.
Yeah, and this month on the Carpenter Factor, we are diving into Memoirs of an Invisible Man, and it might not be our favorite Carpenter movie. It's probably one of the bottom Carpenter movies, but we have an
You'll have to listen to find out.
But we have an absolute blast talking about it. And thank you to everyone who supported the Carpenter Factor this entire time. We're about like a year and 2 months into it, and we will be going. The Carpenter Factor will be going till the end of this year, and then we will dive into another auteur. You know, we have obviously we really are gonna. You know, we really want to dive into Don Coscarelli. We might insert like a shorter, auteur first, like maybe a Jordan Peele or something, but we'll figure it out because we're having a blast. And honestly, man, I texted Zach today. I kind of rewatched Mandalorian, the new season 3, episode 1. And I texted Zach and I was like, holy shit. Like, I didn't realize Dean Cundey was the director of photography for that episode. And it's because of our Carpenter Factor discussions that I even know or care about who Dean Cundey is. Now, Zach knew and cared about who Dean Cundey was before the Carpenter Factor. But for me personally, I have learned so much over this past year with this whole thing we're doing. And Zach, I thank you for that. Like Zach's been my fucking teacher for this entire 4 years that we've been doing podcasting after dark. And it's just like,
I teach all my kids.
I just feel like I just know so much more, man. Like I feel like Luke Skywalker. Like I know so much now. I want to go out into the world and, do some good, type of thing. But thank you all for supporting us. Memoirs of an Invisible Man is a fun conversation. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss out on that one. And as always,
we'll catch you on the dark side. Ooh. Be sure to subscribe to Podcasting After Dark and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. Support Podcasting After Dark on Patreon. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Podcasting After Dark. And visit us next time for another installment of Podcasting After Dark with Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer.
Imagine being one of the last people on Earth, being trapped alone with something not human, something always watching, something always waiting. What would you do? Where would you run? Where would you hide if you were haunted for 7 winters alone?
Podcasting After Dark presents 7 Winters Alone, a dystopian haunted house story by David Irons.
Available now in paperback and ebook.